Get it?
So we're doing that. So we're going puppy dogs.
You win.
Who are you guys?
We're you, dude.
You're metal, dude.
Dudes.
Deliberating. Deliberating. Deliberating.
Dogface.
Deliberating.
Dogface. I'm the dude.
One minute, dude.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
You're a lying dogface pony soldier. You said you were, but now you gotta be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you.
3, 2, 1, fight!
Who are you guys?
We're you, dude.
Hey dudes, is honesty the best policy?
If you're, I'm an Odinist, so it's if you with your kin and kindred, your friends, your business associates, but if they're your enemy, absolutely not.
My contract and my writer both specifically stipulate that if I'm gonna be on this show, I'm not to engage with coyotes or wolves. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to go call my manager and probably my agent,
And your
and
handler.
I'll be back in a little bit, you guys. I
I knew that there would be some beef tonight. There's some tallow, I think, as well. People are just chewing on every bit that they can get, and it's very hot. I don't know who's going to give the Robert Phoenix introduction. I think we're on his channel, so he maybe needs to introduce us.
Yeah, hold on a second. I just had to get into the dog face mode here, just for a minute,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Now that I've established that I'm one of the pack, I can take this off. Here we go.
The leader
And
of
he's
the
got the beard. He's got a beard.
There we go.
It's not quite the full beard, but he's got a beard.
For the record, we had Marcus sniff his butt.
If I had a full beard, I'd be looking like Santa Claus, so I can't do it. Like there's a
We
time and a
encourage
place
that.
for that.
We
time
do,
and place
yes.
for that. Anyway, to my
It's
audience,
almost Christmas in July, Robert.
well, it's Christmas down under, isn't it? Sort of.
Yes, yeah,
It is.
yeah.
It's wintertime south of the equator. It's their solstice. So
Marcus is going to make the guest come on and introduce us.
yeah,
us.
let me
Yeah, of
introduce you. Yeah, so we have right above me AM Wake Up, aka Steve, right there, and Steve was sharing his Pentecostal upbringings and before the show, which was quite interesting.
Mission
then
Temple
over-
fireworks stand.
And over here on the right-hand corner is the incomparable Alan Marcus from alanmarcus.com. And then over here to my right is the great one, Mr. Heathen himself, Ben Balderson. And they're the deliberating dog-faced dudes. And you guys who are on my channel probably know me. So there you go.
And for those on our channel, if you don't know Robert, I don't understand why, but we're going through an extreme time of turmoil, and I've been friends with Robert for years. And if you don't know him, the guy's legendary. If you got some questions about what's going on in the sky and things are a little too interesting, you should maybe go check out what Robert's saying. And, you know, right now we have riots, we have war, we have even in an interpersonal level, not in my family, but in neighbors and things like that. I've been seeing a lot of conflict and controversy. And so I've never, I don't believe I've ever asked Robert on. I try not to abuse my friendships too much, but it seemed like the prime time to ask him on. So if you haven't checked out the 11th House, that's his YouTube, or go over to Rumble. But the great Robert Phoenix.
Well, Ben, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you. And whenever we've had like screen time, the conversations have been freaking epic. So now it's to the power of 3 tonight. So I'm really looking forward to being here.
You said the word weave. I think that's the last time we've spoken on a previous show called Weaving Spiders Welcome.
That's right. I remember that was a long time ago, and I just remember that show as being really epic. It was like the energy, what you guys put together. It's just such a great vibe, and you've all sort of scattered to the winds now, haven't you?
Robert, that was your third or fourth epic. Do you mind if I ask where you're living?
Yeah, so I live in Texas, and I live in a place called Kerrville, which is right next to the Guadalupe River.
Okay.
Which is kind of pretty nice. It's in the hill country.
Yeah.
And I've been here for about a year now, but I've been in the hill country since 2018, and prior to that, I was in Austin. And
Can you go shake some sense into Adam Curry for us?
I have a listener friend, Neil, who is, I wouldn't say he's tight with those guys, but he listens to them quite a bit, and he's been trying to get me on their show for a while. He lives just up the road here in Fredericksburg, which is where I moved from.
They don't really do guests as far as that goes. From what I understand, like I have a good friend who's also close with the Podfather, and I live across the bridge from Dvorak. But I don't have the kind of truck that they allow in El Cerrito unless it has somebody else's company's name on it, and I'm specifically going to like remodel a house or something like that. And then after that, they're like, "No, you got to go. You can't be here.
It's getting dusky out. You should get along."
So which bridge are you talking about? Are you talking about Carquinez Straits Bridge, or are you talking about
the Richmond Bridge? Bridge, I'm in Marin County.
Right. I lived in Point Richmond for a few years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains for years. My brother lived in the Warehouse District across from the Coliseum in Oakland in the late 80s, early 90s. And that was fantastic back then.
They had a lot of raves back there.
Yeah.
I went to a few of those.
I did a lot of work up in the Piedmont Hills and Oakland Hills.
That was my old stomping grounds. But
because you sound Californian, that's why I asked. You don't sound like you're from Texas.
No,
that was the impetus of it.
I've been here for 13 years now, which kind of blows my mind. It's almost it's not quite a third of my life, but getting up there. So.
I live in California now, but I regularly get pegged as obviously a South Dakotan or Canadian or Minnesotan or something like that. Somebody that draws their vowels out.
Oh, it's been a scorcher in Minnesota. We had a real heat wave over here. It was 100 degrees. No fooling. It was 100 degrees, and that was around the midsummer time.
Yeah, no, I know 1980s Bay Area when I hear it. That's all I'm saying.
You pegged me.
You can cut your hair, but you can't. You can cut your hair, but you can't wash it off.
Right.
So we got the who, we got the what, we got the one with the where, the why. We're trying to, what is it, the 5 W's? Where the heck are we on?
The 5 W's and 1 H, right? Isn't that what it is?
Hawaii.
Yeah.
Which also, before I forget, I really like the 2 dogs on the scales, Marcus. Good stuff.
Yeah, trying to find some balance, but realizing we're at the point where the sun is longer in the sky and it's brighter and hotter. It's not the equinox. What is it? The solstice? What's that about?
Solstice. Yeah. So we're at the longest. It's now officially it's getting shorter every day. Just every day it's a little bit shorter. But in the north, the sun is at its longest exposure. And I guess if you're way up north, your nights are real long. Right, you're talking like almost 20 hours if you're up in Alaska, northern part of Canada. So it's real exciting when you have daylight basically 20 hours of the day. So the solstice is actually a very, very interesting time it's considered the most magical time of the year. And this is what Shakespeare based his play, The Midsummer Night's Dream, on. And of course, that play is filled with magic. And the witches have often considered the solstice as their most powerful day of the year. So it's also the birthday of Prince William. And 0 degrees Cancer is, in the secret language of birthday, is also known as the cusp of magic. So these are really interesting days, and we're entering, ironically or unironically, into the dog days, which is when Heliacal Sirius begins to rise with the sun and eventually surpasses the sun. And this is one of the reasons why the United States was, July 4th was chosen as the day that the United States would officially become the United States, because they were esotericists and they were Masons, and they had a very strong connection with Sirius, and they wanted Sirius to be prominent, the binary star with our own sun. So it was a magical working, the inception of this country. And there was another country, I forget who it was, had a really strong connection with Sirius. I forget what it was. We're not the only one, but Franklin was he was the navigator behind that. And they wanted to actually start the signing process. And this is where it gets a little confusing. It's like it takes a while to get the whole document signed, right? But the actual signing of the process for the first names takes place on July 4th. And they wanted to do it sooner, but Franklin waited until the moon was full in Capricorn. But he waited just a bit after that, so that the moon would be in Aquarius, because again, these guys are esotericists and they're acolytes of Francis Bacon, and the moon in Aquarius was like very Atlantean in a lot of ways, right? They saw this as the new Atlantis, and it gives the country this very kind of quirky side to it, with this Aquarian moon. And I've always felt like that Aquarian moon sort of lends itself to America being like incredibly eccentric in a lot of ways. And I think that we're all sort of downstream from that right now.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Robert, but when you were talking about the other nation that looked to Sirius, was that Mali? Is that the Dogon?
I don't know what it is. I think it's a country in Africa. You might be on, but I remember looking at this chart and going, wow, they decided that they wanted to be a country.
There's a handful of different things that are all like, ringing several different bells as far as that goes. And I don't know.
Well, yesterday,
fairly certain that it's Mali and it's the Dogons, because they had a whole belief system that was centered around what they called the dog star.
Right.
That I'm
Those
assuming
doggone
was also
Dogons.
identified as Sirius later on.
So the country that comes to mind the closest is the Philippines, because the Philippines had their anniversary, birthday, whatever you want to call it, yesterday. So, and it's interesting because there's this interesting connection between the Philippines and the United States, right? It's almost like a 53rd state. Mali celebrates its Independence Day on a different day that's connected to the change of the seasons. That's September 22nd, which falls on the autumnal equinox. Mm-hmm. So it is connected to these change of seasons, mm-hmm. but it's autumn instead of fall. But I think that's a really interesting, correlation with, the Dogon and Nomo and that whole mythology, which is really fascinating, because they saw Sirius be, like, you can see, like, Sirius A was known to be the star. You could see it. The Freemasons have a very special relationship with it, but it's Sirius B that the Dogon people said was there, and they said it was there because Nomo brought them their culture, their language, their music, and then later on, the French, who had gone to Mali, that was one of the places they colonized, started to get into the mythology and lore of the Dogon, and then sure enough, they discover Sirius B, and it's right in the location that the Dogon had pegged it. And the whole Nomo thing is really interesting. So in Australia, the Aboriginal people, the name that they have for dolphin is Nomo, and it's the same name as the creator god, theoretically, of the Dogon people.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating.
That brings to
I
mind
actually got the
a lot of things.
mutual friend, Steve Mercer. Either I think not the last time I seen him, but the time before, gave me a couple books on the Dogon. The ones from Laird Scranton, who's brilliant in his work with that. Horrible leftist if you ever look at his social media.
I know. I had Laird on my show one time, and he was a super nice guy. And I think his daughter didn't his daughter marry I'm spacing out his name now. The guy who was the modern day Indiana Jones. I think his daughter married his son. But Laird, super nice guy, great work. Yeah, total leftist.
Yeah, it's bad. It's kind of shocking because you're like, you read his work and you're like, God, this guy's brilliant. And then you look at his social media, you're like, what?
Isn't that a weird phenomenon? How people can be so kind of switched on in one part of their brain, and in this other part of their brain, they're like, whoa, it's like your bicameralization is freaking me out.
It's weird because you give humans some technology, a smart slab, dumb phone, whatever you want to call it. You give them access to social media, and then they just start playing around with it, and then they just go against their better judgment and post silly stuff, things that they wouldn't say anywhere else. And there's sort of this separation from reality, and they get into this sort of strange mood where they can say whatever they want to say online. And then people like, hey, did you mean what you just said in this post? And people screenshot things and save them forever. I would even point towards Truth Social being a platform where people are taking screenshots and posting them. And how weird is it that our politicians are using social media to post edicts and decrees and thoughts and emotions and what fast food restaurant they prefer? It's all just mixed together into this weird idea sphere, noosphere, whatever it is, of just put it online, produce content for the sake of content, without any sort of editorial choice of why am I posting this?
Yeah, it's like there's no filter, right? It's just like, yeah, it's just it's a babble is what it is, really.
There's no filter
Are
on
you
anything.
wearing a shirt that has is your head poking through like an animation girl?
No, it's not anime. It's
that's cool.
It's a big black cat.
I love that.
Oh. And there's a girl sitting on top of it.
Wait, hang on. I'm gonna have to take a brief departure since you did that, man. I really am. Let's see, Gillian Keys.
It's a luck
Uncle
dragon.
Daycare. Yes. No, hang on, dude. I saw the freaking luck dragon in the sky today. I did. I was walking the dog, and there was a huge fog front moving in. I was telling my girl about this I don't know, an hour ago. And it looked like the freaking luck dragon. And then because I'm, managing a pit bull who's trying to go into bushes and the water at the same time because he knows there's a ball there. He knows.
That's right. Right.
There's
yeah.
going to be one there. He just looks hard enough, it'll show up.
Yeah.
By the time I got my camera out, it had dissipated a little bit. But yeah, luck dragony. But man, you showing the black cat on your shirt. Okay, Robert, I'm sorry. This is how my brain works. If there's a point of reference that's going to take me to a place of either comedy
We're
or
weaving.
music,
Here we go.
I'm gonna do that. And here we are. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, Gillian Keeves.
Hi, my name's Holly, and I run Happy Hands Daycare. When the virus shut down our daycare center, people just didn't feel safe sending their kids. We were about to close our doors, but then we had an idea. We realized that there's probably so many people stuck inside with family members that they just can't stand. So we decided to reopen at the daycare center for uncles.
Hey!
Uncle Hank, good to have you today.
I got a hemorrhoid like a monkey knuckle.
All right. When most people have an uncle, they never think they'll spend all day with them.
Hey, you guys think fire's beautiful, right? Good morning, Miss Holly. My mom told me to say thank you for all the prayers for our iguana.
Once COVID hit, that nightmare became a reality. Uncle Shane.
Good morning.
Come on in.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
And that's Marcus with his cat shirt right there. That's why. But wait.
Are you calling me a monkey's uncle?
No, but you could be monkey's knuckle.
Listen, rhymes that keep their secrets will unfold behind the clouds, and there upon the rainbow is the answer to a never-ending story.
And that's what it says in the book of the RZA, the Jizza, Old Dirty Bastard, You Gotta Inspect the Deck, Raekwon the Chef,
They bring our faces back.
The METHOD Man, chapter 7, verse 16.
What sound does a wolf make?
Wolves.
So
That's right. What sound does a wolf make?
Wolf
Wolves.
sounds.
Yes. You heard it here first.
Wolf sounds.
I'm
It's like a
sorry.
7 minute
At first,
sketch.
I
I'm not
thought
gonna
that
be
was
able
like
to-
a penis or something, and then I thought it was like a woman's legs, and I didn't mean to blurt that out, but I was kind of relieved it wasn't a penis.
So we're talking pareidolia.
That's a good story, Ben.
What do you see in the clouds?
You never know what Marcus is gonna wear.
That's fair. He was dressed like Screech from Saved by the Bell last week.
Yeah, and now it
I
looks
had
like
another
it
choice.
looks like there's like a little hand off to his left shoulder, and it's like legs wearing like boots or something. And I was like, is his head like going through a?
This is my other choice, but I went with the never-ending story instead.
I'm gonna
The-
have
the
to
black
send
cat
you some
firework.
shirts, man.
Yeah, I need shirts. I need shirts.
I got you, buddy.
We apologize, Robert. Silliness
No,
about
it's okay. I'm here for the ride, man.
So back to the state of affairs.
We're living in adult daycare, it seems. I worked at a tree farm. They did Christmas trees. We talked Christmas in July, and at the tree nursery, I had to make it clear that it was not an adult daycare, and people were a little confused about what was going on at the tree farm. It's a nursery.
Yeah.
Adults have lost their mind and they're behaving in the worst possible ways. What is going on, and why is that happening?
I think Twitter is the greatest freaking petri dish right now to watch a lot of this stuff unfold for a lot of different reasons. Number one, you get real-time madness, right? You just see real-time like shit that you're going, what? Like the latest thing that I saw just through the feed, not through interactions with people. That's a whole other like kettle of fish, right? But Robert Kennedy Jr., sitting down saying, yeah, I really hope that in the next 5 years, everybody can have a wearable electronic device that allows us to technologically track what's going on with their bodies so we can keep them healthier. And I'm like, okay, is this really where you started with all this? And is it like it's like a what the fuck moment, right? And Nicole Shanahan, I'm sure, is like just cursing at the screen, saying, "Why the fuck did I get involved with this guy?"
Well,
Right?
both Nicole Shanahan and Bobby have been invested in biotech for a decade or more.
Nicole for sure, and maybe that's the kicker here. with,
There's receipts on Bobby for it
Yeah.
too. I've got friends that have done the work for it. But
Yeah, no, I totally believe it, and and she basically bankrolled his campaign.
Yeah.
But a lot
Yeah.
of people feel like it's a bait and switch, right?
I've been calling it the bait and switch administration from day one, like as a kind of a thing. We were talking about this morning on the show. It's very, very, very like I don't know, auspicious or congruent that you mentioned that, because while Bobby is saying that this past week, there's been all of the the people meeting at the UN last week, and then summer Davos this week, where they're doing neat stuff like autonomous biochemical sensing that can turn human bodies into surveillance tools under the auspice of, hey, we want to monitor your health, make sure you guys are okay. So if there's anything floating around in you, don't worry. We've got solutions for it. We're going to inject nanobots and nanoparticles into you. They're going to relay your information to our systems, and we're going to determine what's best for you. You don't get to do that anymore. We've decided you're just dumb, filthy apes. So we're going to stop letting you make decisions from now on.
I shall continue procreating viviparously. Thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing that post that the graphic brought to mind was that, well, we're not only going to monitor you, but you're going to monitor other people for us, right? You're going to be a freaking camera. You're going to be a sensory node that we'll pick up, and we'll use you as the surveillance platform, right? That's what I got from that. And and that to me is like, and look, I'm going to ask you guys.
They can reverse that then, right? Yeah. There's no doubt. Like if you're standing in, like, most recently all the riots we're seeing, they can amp that up for sure.
Yeah, sure. It's like that Michael Crichton book, The Terminal Man. Mm-hmm. Where they're able to get in and tweak the guy's brain. George Segal plays the actor in the movie. The Terminal. It's very similar to The Terminal Man. But let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that we already have nano devices inside of us?
I think that there's a chance that quite a few people do. I'm not trying to be snobbish, but I think the Emily Moyer, I think that the way I live, I probably don't. But I think there's a chance people do, for sure.
I would tend to think that it would be hard pressed to find people in the West or Russia, China, Southeast Asia that didn't have heavy exposure to at least, nanoparticles, non-consensual heavy metals, things of that nature. And I do believe that that's why we've seen a kind of a huge push over the last 15, 20 years of people trying to present various different, to varying degrees of success, detoxifying remedies and things that will help leach or rid your body of these particular these particular toxins. But I think that that's new-ish, last 60, 80 years in human history in the modern era as far as that goes. And I think there's probably still some things that we need to learn as far as what actually will rid our body of these completely unnatural impurities. But yeah, even in the middle of nowhere, you're still subjected to stratospheric aerosol injections. You're still downstream from where things get dumped into what becomes your groundwater and your soil. It's unfortunately very, very, very difficult in the West, at least specifically, to try to avoid it. So then it becomes incumbent to learn how to rid it from your system. Yeah.
So back in starting around 2006, basically from 2006 to about 2010, about 4 years, I really struggled with what some people at that time were calling Morgellons. And the stuff that I went through, I'll skip over a lot of the minutia, but I'll give you a couple examples of the things that I was dealing with. So I knew that something had invaded my body, and I was feverishly trying to figure out how to get it out of my body. And I was reading about what people were doing because there was a lot of sort of chatter on the internet at that time. It was like an induction phase. At that time, Steve, you'd appreciate this on some level. I lived right down the hill from DARPA, which is right up there above Berkeley. Right?
I lived right down the hill from Lockheed in Bonnie Doon in Santa Cruz County. Yeah.
So I believe that DARPA was running experiments.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In the East Bay at that time, and
yes,
I was part of that experiment. And one of the things that I had learned to do was to get into a hot bath and use hydrogen peroxide, baking soda, and Epsom salts. So that's what I would do. And I would sit in there and I would watch these things come out of my skin. Okay? I'd watch them come out of my skin. Like not one or two, but like dozens. And then I could see them sort of kind of what's what I'm looking for, sort of it's almost like that little motor. And they were sort of navigating in the bath water. And then what they would do, I'd watch this. What they would do is they would find each other, and then they would create a more complex thing. Mm-hmm. And it was like I'm watching all this, right? It's fucking freaky, right? Like what the hell's going on?
Do you think the salts were a bonding agent or a catalyst that helped it, or were they going to bond naturally?
I don't know. I think they were going to bond naturally because I think that's what they do. Like that's what nanomachines do. They find each other and they become more complex machines once they find each other. So this went on for a while, and then the symptoms started to get even weirder. And I remember at one point I blew my nose, right? And in the tissue was this thing that looked like an octagonal polymer. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Right? Why do I have this octagonal polymer? It almost looked like some kind of a chip or something. And I pulled another one or a couple out of my mouth, same shape, and a little pinkish. It looked like it had maybe a little bit of blood in it, like it was almost like maybe running off the blood. This went on for quite a while. And that's why I asked that question, because I feel like they've been delivering these nanomachines with the chafe, right, with the chemtrails for decades now. And and I feel like at what level did we consent to that? Did we consent to it because our names are in all caps Is that why it happened? Or was it something that we didn't consent to? We must have consented somewhere in order for it to happen, right? Because nothing happens without consent. So that's why I brought the question up, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion about that.
I don't at all deny that they chemtrail. There's no doubt. I have a mixed feeling on what I think is going on with it. It seems like they're trying to ionize the sky to me, but I don't. But the particles that they're putting up, by the time they come through the atmosphere, from the particle size they are, would have oxidized and been inert by the time it gets anywhere near us. The heavy metal toxicity that everybody's really suffering, and this is something because I also study permaculture and things like that. And so if you look up glyphosate actually chelates aluminum and other metals. So aluminum's one of the more common metals in the crust, period. And so we've taken this glyphosate and this aluminum, which was frozen, now becomes chelated and is able to be mobile, and it's entering the water table and getting sucked up by plants and everything else. So the extensive use of glyphosate seems to be the big cause of what's going on with all the metals that we're now intaking, rather than, because the chemtrail thing never did make sense, because again, you've got whether it's mobile, whether it's able to be uptaken, whether it's been oxidized, all those states. Well, the glyphosate, and this is apparently a mainstream known science thing that just nobody talks about, actually chelates these metals and is just flooding the entire water tables with them. And unless you live like me, where you're close to the top of a mountain and you have springs jumping off your property, your water's probably not great.
Right.
I see it more of an all-in thing rather than it's got to be one or another, because there's so many different chemicals, metals, shit like that, we've had well and good documented evidence for fuck, dude, 20 years at this point, 25 years, as far as what's being rained down on us. Now, what any individual can do to mitigate that, what your natural soil can do to mitigate that, what other, foliage, shit like that, the kind of fucking diffusion you have, there's a whole bunch of variables. But dude, a few years ago when I was in Sonoma County, I was driving through wine country, and it wasn't fucking spider webs, it was like legitimate metal, shiny freaking webbing over the top of all of these different wine grapes. I got out of the truck and I went over to look at it, and I touched it, and it moved, but it didn't like bend like it was a web. You know what I mean? It moved like it was a solid piece of, inanimate object.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. Maybe they have robo spiders and I missed the memo on that one. I probably would not be CC'd on that particular email.
I have a quick question for all of you. When did you first hear the word nanobot, nanomachine, nanoparticle, nano? When did you first hear that and learn about that? And where, if you remember exactly?
Can I go? So I used to work with this magazine, I guess, called Mondo 2000, a long time ago. And I was there at the death rattle of Mondo. And there was a guy who was like our science editor. And his name was Charles Osman. And Charles was a frequent guest on Art Bell. And he was a contractor up at Lawrence Livermore. He had like NDAs, like Charles was like crazy smart, and he was the first guy that. So this would be around '96, and I started having these conversations with him about nanobots, nanotechnology, synthetic sentience, self-replicating systems. Like I was getting like a crash course in this stuff from him, and that's where I first started to. Right around '96.
So I'm supposed to ask about Dave Gary and the U.S. Liberty survivors being threatened to be sued. That sounds spicy.
Yeah, that's Rumble chat to the AM Wake Up. We'll get to that in a moment once we finish our thought about Mondo 2000 magazine. Great magazine. I think their archives are mostly online to find that stuff. And you said 1996?
Yeah, by that time, we were just trying to bail water on this thing.
Right.
And I was there for the last issue, and we had the unfinished issue, which was going to be great. But the juice was gone.
When was the final issue?
The final issue was 1996. It was I think it was 97, and it was right at the sort of the new year. I remember taking a bunch of Mondos to like the annual like Apple convention in San Francisco with Steve Jobs, and I'm passing it out to all these Apple people, because a lot of those early Apple people were really interesting early adopters, and they were real rebels, not like they are today. So they were gobbling up like these copies of Mondo. It was great. It was like candy. So yeah, I was there for the final print and then the final unprinted, which was going to be a great issue. Never made it to the stands, but yeah, it was interesting. And I spent a lot of time with Charles, and we got to know each other fairly well. So, half the stuff I would go over to his place up in the Berkeley Hills, and it was like the place of a mad scientist. There were books and manuals and shit stacked everywhere, and all these computers. He was a Gemini, so it all made sense to him. But a really interesting guy, and he has this story that he told me one time. He was down for one of these like conventions, like like when I say early tech, this is like the mid '90s. So these are like government people, corporate people. They're into big brains, and this is in Brazil. And he said he was with this guy who was another researcher, tech dude, really super high level, and they're waiting for this van to pick them up from the hotel to take them to this convention center. And of course, Brazil is dense with foliage, right? He's standing right next to the guy, and he, Charles, sort of a, little eccentric. He's probably talking to himself and looking at this, looking at that, and he turns to his left, and the guy is gone. Right? Like he was there like 30 seconds before, and he's gone. And Charles never saw this dude again. Never saw him again. And my theory is that because the foliage is so dense, somebody was on the other side of this foliage and just grabbed him and either did a chloroform job or something, and felt a lot like a brain drain kind of, smash and grab. Never saw the guy again. Like, how bizarre is that? You gotta live with that.
And that's all factual stuff. You're talking about Mondo 2000, Charles Osman, actual science that you're publishing in the science article?
Absolutely.
Okay, because my question was, when did you first hear about nano? And I was wondering if it was in actual science papers or was it like science fiction?
The first time I heard about it was Terminator 2, right, with the nanomorph. And that was like 90 or 91, something like that. And that's the first time I remember hearing anything about like any kind of nanotechnology. And then, yeah, like Robert, I remember hearing it again on Coast to Coast because I was a freaking disciple of Art Bell when I was going to high school. I graduated high school in '96, and yeah, I spent most of high school listening to Coast, and I think then X Files. I think the X Files had a couple of episodes, uh, 97, 98, something like that, that explored nanotechnology, and now apparently it's in the chicken and the rice and the lettuce and lots of other crap.
Yeah, very interesting. Balderson, did you have an answer? I have a long answer.
Definitely from a sci-fi book. Definitely from a sci-fi book. I can't remember which one I read first. It's a trope in a number of them, and I read sci-fi back when I was like junior high-ish. So that one was quite a while ago. I don't find that one near as fun as the fantasy. If I'm going to read books for pleasure, fantasy has been my genre for quite a few years. Heavy metal, 100%. That was great.
He's talking about a video game from Hideo Kojima out of Japan called Metal Gear Solid, that series.
I don't know anything about video games.
Well, I'll tell you a little lesson in video games. I have a big box here from an actual computer game called it's pronounced Deus Ex, like Deus Ex Machina. Are you guys familiar with this game? From Eon Storm. I got this at Best Buy in Minnesota. Minnesota's the birthplace of the Best Buy.
I thought that was a movie, to be honest. I've seen like memes and stuff on it, I think, but I always thought it was a movie.
Yeah, I think it was a movie. I think Paul Oakenfold did the soundtrack.
The sound, the glasses, yeah, it's like real shiny box, very chrome, very futuristic. And this was based off of exactly what you guys were talking about, Mondo Magazine, Art Bell, and all the conspiracies. In the video game, you play an agent. It's like an RPG, so your character is an agent, and it's a clone. So it's a cloned human agent birthed in a vat, and then your superpowers are nanobots. So the whole thing is, the story is terrorists have kind of taken over New York City. They have destroyed the Statue of Liberty. So you're on New York, and then on that place where the Statue of Liberty once was, they established this UNATCO thing against the terrorist force because there was a virus. There was like this worldwide virus that was spread around the globe. And then there was like this ambrosia vaccine that the wealthy people were fighting for access to this thing. Sounds kind of familiar. Yeah, this game came out 25 years ago.
I think he's asking if we're going to World War III, Robert.
Are we going to World War III? Aren't we already in World War III? I mean, have we been here for a while now? They really just haven't told us. But the war theater is so strange, isn't it? And it's going to get even stranger. Like, we're going to bring a little astrology into the conversation now. So recently, I believe it was April 12th, if I'm not mistaken, Neptune went into Aries, and it's going to retrograde back into Pisces. And Saturn's also in Aries, which will retrograde. But we have not seen Neptune in Aries since the freaking Civil War. And it was the day after they surrendered at Fort Sumter that Neptune went into Aries. And ever since then, like this whole black, white, Civil War theme started to just become out of control, right? Like it all sort of kicked off with the stabbing of Austin Metcalf in Frisco, Texas. And Austin Metcalf was a twin, right? So he and his twin brother were at a high school track meet, and there was a young dude named Carmelo Anthony with a K, and apparently they beefed, and Carmelo Anthony took a knife and plunged it into his heart, right? So you have the killing of a twin, which is always very significant. Of course, Jupiter is in Gemini. On that day of the killing, the moon was also in Gemini, which is where it is tonight as we're broadcasting balsamic. And then it starts to get very strange. It starts to get really, really, really strange. Because at the same time that this stabbing takes place, Carmelo Anthony with a C starts to, like, he's a basketball player. You know, he hadn't really, been around, maybe a podcast or two, but all of a sudden, like, he's everywhere. And that day that Carmelo Anthony with a K stabs Austin Metcalf, Carmelo Anthony with a C is named to the Basketball Hall of Fame. It's very strange. And then there's this commercial, again, out of nowhere, like just out of nowhere. Carmelo Anthony with a C is being honored by his college coach, Jim Boeheim. And they're unveiling the statue of Carmelo. And I don't know why he's there, but Dwayne Wade is standing next to him. And Dwayne Wade didn't go to Syracuse. They may have crossed paths at some point because Carmelo was a basketball gypsy. But Dwayne Wade's claim to fame is that he and Gabrielle Union turned one of their kids into, a trans kid, right? So, and now he's like part owner of the Utah Jazz. Anyway, he's standing next to Carmelo, and they unveil the statue, and it is an obelisk, but a small version of Carmelo Anthony. And it's like there's a little Carmelo, right? And at the same time, there's this stabbing with Carmelo with a K. And Carmelo Anthony also happens to be a Gemini. And this is, and you get into the Civil War, it's a very Gemini conflict, right? It's like North versus South, brother versus brother, which is very Gemini. So then this movie comes out called Sinners. Are you guys familiar with this movie, Sinners? Okay. So Sinners, I'll give you the backstory, Ben, real quick. Takes place maybe sometime in the 30s, right around the 30s. And it takes place, I think, somewhere in Mississippi. And the story is that there are these two twin brothers. Remember, this is right on the heels of this Carmelo Anthony stabbing of Austin Metcalf, who happens to be a twin. And it's the story of these twin brothers who were a member of Al Capone's gang. And they go to Mississippi and they open this roadhouse. And it's sort of like the guy who directed, his name Ryan Coogler, directed he directs all of Michael B. Jordan's movies. And it's very stylized and kind of sort of, what would you call it? Blacker canna, right? Sort of folk and sort of supernatural, and there's blues, but they kind of break the barrier a little bit. They kind of hip hop it, and there's lewd and lascivious behavior, hence Sinners, right? So there's two brothers, two twins, and they go there, and towards the third part of the last third of the movie, they introduce a white demon who is a vampire, right? It's got to be a white demon vampire. So that gets inserted into the movie. Now it's a horror flick. And all this mayhem ensues. And then Michael B. Jordan's twin brother gets killed in the movie, right? And then at the end of the movie, there are these guys who show up. One of the guys was the guy who sold him this barn for the roadhouse. But when he shows back up again, he's in a Ku Klux Klan outfit with a bunch of his Klan buddies. And Michael B. Jordan's character is waiting in the bushes with a Chicago-style Tommy gun. and then he mows them all down, right? And again, this is all very Civil War thematic stuff. But then you get into the.
Please send me the name. This sounds like a good movie.
It's called Sinners, right? Sinners. So then there's this weird connection between Michael B. Jordan and Michael J. Jordan. And they're both named Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan played for the Chicago Bulls. Michael J. Jordan is an Aquarius, and Michael B. Jordan is also an Aquarius. And Michael B. Jordan's first movie was called Hardball, and it takes place in Chicago, and Keanu Reeves plays a guy who's forced by a judge to go coach a inner city black baseball team. And so Michael B. Jordan is in that movie. He makes his debut in that movie. Now remember, that's in the city of Chicago, right? And that's where Michael J. Jordan is also playing for the Chicago Bulls. So Michael J. Jordan has a weird part of his life where the NBA tells him, basically, you got to sit down because he's got all this gambling shit swirling around him. So he takes a year off, and where does he go? He goes to the South, and he winds up playing for the Birmingham Barons and plays AAA baseball. He's not very good. And if you do sort of the cinematic math in your brain, right, the Michael B. Jordan character, who is in Chicago playing Little League baseball, eventually his character winds up going to the South. So there's this weird, like, all this like Civil War stuff that's starting to really percolate and take place. The Carmelo Anthony family raises about $500,000 on GoFundMe, causing a lot of tension, great stir. And then, staying with this kind of Civil War theme in the South, you even have this strange reenactment of the farmers from South Africa, right, who are being burned out of their farms.
The Boers?
The Boers getting asylum in the United States, right? So now we're seeing like these other, sinks and tropes around this Civil War energy, which is not going away, by the way, right? And we just saw what happened in LA, right? That's a different kind of Civil War, but nonetheless, right? You have fractions of the country wanting to fight against each other, and even in the MAGA world, you've got a Civil War going on. You've got the hardcore, Trump is God. I trust in Trump. And you have people are like, hey, wait a second. This is not what we signed up for. We signed up for, basically a better economy. Good luck with that. No wars, and in the restoration of our borders. Like those are the three main things. And then you have people like Tucker Carlson and Thomas Massey. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? This is not what we should be doing. This is not make Israel great again. This is make America great again. So even in MAGA world, there's like this Civil War. So this Neptune and Aries energy is very, very prevalent. But also, if you look at like what's going on in whatever's going on in Iran, like I'm not even sure people really completely understand, right? And Aries is war, and Neptune is like fog. So we're dealing with like the fog of war. We don't really understand. We don't really comprehend what's happening there. There are threads we can follow, but we don't really comprehend what's going on.
Kind of tugging a thread.
Yeah, and we got Saturn and Aries coming into the discussion too. And people are horny for war with Saturn and Aries. You go back and you look at the Saturn and Aries cycles. In 1968, when Saturn was in Aries, the Tet Offensive begins in Vietnam in February and lasts all the way through September. Not only that, but you have the summer of hate, right? Which is the Democratic National Convention. You have the SDS being taken over by the Weather Underground, the Summer of Rage, like all that stuff's happening. Paris is on fire. So there's like Saturn Aries is a heavy energy. You go forward in the 90s and you run into Kosovo, right? Which is another war environment. You got a bunch of other shit going down, like in Africa, Rwanda. And then in America, the 90s, it's a little pre-Saturnaries, but it sort of culminates with Richard Jewell and the bombing in Atlanta at the Olympic Village, right? Like prior to that, they had Ted Kaczynski sort of setting the stage for these loose cannons, right? You had Timothy McVeigh, right? Timothy McVeigh would theoretically die on 9/11 in 1996, and I say theoretically. And then you had, of course, Waco and David Kress. So all these things are cascading because they want to build a case that Americans, patriotic Americans, Tea Party Americans, they're unsafe, right?
Don't forget Ruby Ridge.
Yep, Ruby Ridge, and there's others too. Like there's others too. Like you had the Freemen up in Montana, right? That's all going on, and it was all going to culminate with this explosion at the Olympic Village. And Richard Jewell, like he fucked it up for them. Like he basically put a monkey wrench in because he was paying attention. He saw something that shouldn't have been there, and then they ruined his life, right? And I was there. I was at the Olympics, and I was about maybe 200 yards away from where that happened, the Olympic Village, and I was maybe about an hour removed before it happened. And prior to that, right, I was reading tarot cards down there. Prior to that, the entire city of Atlanta was it was like under some kind of martial law. It was weird. Like there are dudes walking around with semi-automatics all over the place. You had National Guard, you had State Guard. It was like they were preparing people for something, right? Like they were like getting people's head wrapped around like something bad could happen there. And that was prior to this thing going off. And then it goes off. That's all 1996. That's Saturn and Aries, right? And so that's another version of a civil war. Like we're going to target Americans, not just any Americans, white Americans, and we're going to turn them into the bad guys. So here we are again. Saturn comes around in Aries, and whenever you're ready, we'll launch into some Pluto and Aquarius, and we'll talk about the strange vibes of your neck of the woods, Ben, and just in general with Pluto and Aquarius. But I just wanted to launch this conversation with this Neptune and Saturn talk. It's pretty big. And next year in February, we're going to have an alignment that hasn't occurred in 6,000 years. And that's when Neptune and Saturn all ingress into the same sign at the same time at 0 degrees. So we're in uncharted territory astrologically.
So I got a couple questions or just thoughts here talking Civil War, the No Kings movement. I was doing some research into like civil rights movement, which would lead us to Martin Luther King Jr., who was assassinated on 4/4/68, so April 4th, 1968. Before that, he received a Nobel Peace Prize. So there's peace, war and peace, civil rights, civil war, and the civil rights movement, which has kind of maybe reached its logical conclusion, I guess, in 2025, where now we're understanding the definition of what a woman is. But how did we get here, and how did that? It didn't really start, but there's a point when Martin Luther King had control, I guess, of a movement, a peaceful protest movement, doing the civil rights marches, and then he gets taken out. So then who kind of takes over that movement? A woman named Marion Logan. So Marion continues her work with the SCLC until about 1969, when she resigned due to her belief that the organization was no longer following the path of Dr. King. So for a time, she had accompanied MLK to Oslo, Norway, to receive the Peace Medal. So then they kind of took her out as well. And then it's like, how did we lose track of where the civil rights movement was going, and where is it now?
Well, so I follow a fair amount of like sort of Black truth content creators, and there's this kind of amazing 180 pivot going on in the Black culture around things like civil rights, the Democratic Party. For lack of a better term, they're like fleeing the plantation. Like there is this awakening happening, and in large part, it was kind of kickstarted by this guy Kevin Samuels, who was sort of the leader of what they call the manosphere, and he was getting Black men to understand their value, and to Tommy Sotomayor is kind of another guy in that world, but Kevin Samuels was really the guy, and he was instructing these men, hey, look, don't settle for like cheap sex or cheap lay or a baby mama. Like, get your shit together. He was really into fashion, not in the sense that it was like a fad or a trend, but it was an extension of who you were. Like, pull up your goddamn pants, right? And, wear a collared shirt and, present yourself to the world in a way where people are going to respect you. So a lot of this kind of starts with Kevin Samuels, and there's some other content creators. And Jason Whitlock is somebody who I follow and watch his show. And Jason had in a lot of ways been the tip of the spear on some of this stuff as well. And he recently had on this guy, Chad Jackson, who has got a 2-hour documentary on Martin Luther King, which is not real favorable. Like, it gets into the dark side of Martin Luther King. And now what you're starting to see is this deconstruction of what I would call sort of the facade of the civil rights movement, right? Like when you look at Rosa Parks, Rosa Parks just didn't decide one day that she was going to sit in the front of the bus, right? Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King were part of something called the Outlander School, which was in Tennessee. And it was a school that was run by Marxists. And so they were getting Marxist training, Marxist theory. There's pictures, you can see them. They're sort of in the lecture room, right? So Rosa Parks, who's an Aquarian, by the way, she was being trained basically in civil disobedience. And so when she made that move in the bus, of course, there's a photographer there. It's all staged, right? It's all part of the simulated reality. So what's happening now is, again, if we're looking at this from this whole Civil War kind of gestalt, right? That theoretically, the idea was that the Civil War was there to free the slaves, right? Abolition. It's not really true. It was probably about number 3 or 4 down the list. But what's happening now is that there is a new version of that, which is mental, is psychological, and it's metaphysical. So there's a large swath of Black America and Black men, larger than it was before. I don't know what the numbers are, but they're waking up and they're rejecting the dogma of the Democratic Party. And now you can see that there's starting to be some like heavy tension between Black women and Black men, because Black women have been exalted, right, through with the ultimate kind of manifestation of Kamala Harris, who isn't even really Black, but we'll just use her as an example. So the exaltation of the Black goddess, which is really like this archetypal expression of the Black Madonna, right? The Black Madonna plays a role in alchemy. Right? She is the queen of the earth. Mary, who's the white Madonna, is the queen of the air, or the queen of heaven. And when you put the two triangles together, you get the Magic Star, one triangle going down, one triangle going up. So this idea of the Black Madonna and the exaltation of the Black woman has become very popular over the last 8-9 years. And I think some of this is there's twofold. Some of this is a byproduct of some kind of esoteric working, that I think kind of leans into Freemasonry, where they're elevating this sort of like goddess figure. The other part is that astrologically in 2011, the fixed star Regulus, which had been in Leo for centuries, moves into Virgo. And when it moves into Virgo, it sets this very different tone. It goes into a feminine energy. It's no longer the energy of the king or the energy of the royalty. It's the energy of the people, the folk. And, it's no coincidence in a lot of ways that we have Barack Obama, who's around for that, right? And, his whole thing with America is we'll lead from behind. And who knows what he was really talking about. But instead of leading from the front, we're going to lead from behind, which is a very Virgoan kind of sort of statement. So now what's happened is that, this idea that Black women have been elevated to the status of Yas queens, and you get all these videos now where you're watching these Black women just lose their minds and are out of control, on airplanes, or they're getting into fights at, I don't know, fucking Popeyes so they get the right sauce, right? And it's part of this effect of exalting a group of people without any real reason other than some of the things I've talked about. There's more to it. So Black men are watching this now, right? And they're seeing Black women kind of leapfrog them in terms of status, in terms of employability, and they're not real happy, right? They're not really down with the program, and this is another sort of adding some more fuel. And even now we're seeing kind of a sea change in Black women, and there are Black women now who are starting to reject this, move to the front of the line program, even if you don't have any real expertise or professional history with anything. So this is again part of the Civil War theme, right? Black America is starting to wake up.
You mentioned Kevin Samuels, who died on 5/5/2022.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
53 years old.
His death is really weird too. There's something very unusual about his death, and I think he was probably taken out. Like there's like this, he picks up this woman that he doesn't know, which is also strange for him because that wasn't really like part of his program. But he had, I think it says heart attack. Am I right there, Ellen?
I just got a date of death that didn't confirm the cause.
I think it's a heart attack.
On the report.
I think it's a heart attack. But
Did
this
he die
goes
of a broken heart meeting a woman?
I don't know, man.
Is that implied?
No, I'm not sure. I think there might have been something a little more, I would say, engineer. I'm gonna go in that direction.
Because I heard with Martin Luther King, he loved women. He loved a lot of different women. Maybe he was a bit of a philanderer.
He was a lot of a philanderer, and he was, he, like any red-blooded male, he was into menage a trois and whatever he could. He was a Capricorn. Very lusty.
Are you talking French kissing?
Yeah, well, that's
that type of stuff.
That type of stuff, right? Yeah. So again, this is another effect here. What we're seeing, we're watching, and then you have the whole sinners. Like, this is just such a fascinating time we're living in because we're reanimating this zeitgeist. So Neptune and Aries, now you got Saturn and Aries, which is heavy duty war energy. They're coming together, feeling very messianic, down the road, right? And then we have the Pluto and Aquarius stuff, which gets into like what Ben was talking about and his community, and people kind of going nuts because Aquarius like is your community, right? Theoretically, it's it's your tribe, the people that you surround yourself with, and Pluto is not only retrograde, but it's also out of bounds, and Pluto will be out of bounds 2 times during this 14-year cycle, and we're in one of the out of bounds periods. And so when a planet goes out of bounds, it tends to get wild. It tends to be kind of out of control. Literally the term out of bounds. So when we get into Pluto and Aquarius, and then also the retrograde part is fascinating, because I'm starting to see this like in the social media world, and like the masks are coming off a lot of these people, and it's funny because that Spider-Man meme where there's like 2 Spider-Man, right? And that Spider-Man meme is really indicative of sort of what's going on in MAGA, because one of the Spider-Man looking at the other Spider-Man, and that Spider-Man is like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Thomas Massey, Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, probably Theo Vaughn, all these people who want to be more conservative, more America, and then less Israel, right? And then you have the other sort of, Spider-Man. You have Laura Loomer and Sean Hannity and what's his name, Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and probably Tim Pool. You have all these other people that are like very pro-Israel and let's invade, and it's like, oh, whose masks are coming off here? Because one side is saying to the other side, oh, we know who you are. You're not real MAGA. No, you've revealed yourself. You're not real MAGA. You're not going to stand by the president no matter what. And the other side is saying, oh, your masks are off because all you give a shit about is war, aggression, and Israel. And that's a very Pluto in Aquarius retrograde kind of moment, right? You're starting to see some like weird infighting in group fighting. The Democrats are doing a different Pluto retrograde move. They're trying to move back to the center, right? They're trying to, kind of recapture, like, what the fuck happened? We got to get some dudes back. Well, they hired David Hogg to be number 2 in the Democratic Party. And he basically said, yeah, he was on Bill Maher. He said, look, you want dudes back, guys want to get laid, right? They don't want to be a part of a party that is going to, shut him down for being a male. Well, that lasted about 2 days. They kicked his ass out, but they're desperately trying to sort of retrench, right? Karen Jean-Pierre is no longer a Democrat. She's an independent. So that's going through the Democratic Party, and they're trying to, sort of stumble back to the center in some ways. And I think, wasn't Bernie Sanders just on Joe Rogan lately? Like, isn't that another, like, sort of attempt to, move back to the center? So there's a hell of a lot going on right now. And we're not even in Uranus and Gemini, which is coming. We're going to have a brief ingress with Uranus and Gemini, trining Pluto and Aquarius. 2026 is the year where it all goes off. We are in about a 3-year period. There's no Earth, nothing grounding us.
So if we're not grounded and there are no lines in the ground for people to determine what is in and out of bounds, we're just kind of in a free fall. Are we still into this period of, we're talking about it being like the tribulation period, 7 years from biblical eschatology, the end times type stuff? Katy Perry was, the whore of Babylon. She rode the beast, and then she rides up into a space rocket tourism thing, and then she lands on the ground, and she has the daisy, the flower, and then she kisses the ground. What is that
Space
about?
penis.
So it's like up is down, down is up. Where are the lines? Where's the boundaries? This type of thing.
Yeah. So they're like, yeah, that will extend into things like, biology, synthetic biology, robots, AI. Good luck. good luck determining what the fuck is real, right? It's going to get even harder. I think people who can handle chaos are going to do better than people who demand fixity and define roles. So if you can surf the chaos, this is like Mavericks.
Oh, it's been so much fun. I've been enjoying it. Let's go back to like 1996 Mondo magazine, cyberpunk culture and 3D graphics. Now, 1996, that's PlayStation console, Sony, and then Nintendo 64. And what's the big improvement here? They had a joystick. So people are running around in 3 dimensions. The old PC games where you'd have, the 2D platformer Mario, you go from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, figure that out. Now, when we added the 3rd dimension, there was this game where you'd fly around and it would be 3 degrees of axis, X, Y, and Z axis. So you go up, down, left, right, and all around. Now, the issue was, what is up and what is down? When you're just in a map and you're flying around, you have to find your orientation. So people were getting just sick because they were going fast and they had a joystick and they'd go forward. But then there's also this idea, like if you push your joystick forward, do you go down or do you go up? And if people had their control schemes set differently, so I was flying around in like an X-Wing style game, like Star Wars, Rogue Squadron, X-Fighter. You're flying around and you're trying to navigate. But when there's no ground, there is no up and there's no down. It's just, where are you navigating?
That's a brilliant question. It's a brilliant question. And I think people are going to have to address that over the next 3 years. And even when you bring Neptune into the equation, because the outer planets all kind of dance slowly for a while together. Neptune's in Aries and it's fire, so we're in the sextile mode with Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius. And the United States is coming into its Uranus return as well. So, Uranus has an 84-year cycle. So every 84 years, Uranus comes back around. And I haven't done the math, and I should. But, we'd have to go back 84 years to see where we were with the first Uranus return. Probably puts us, somewhere like 1914 or 15 or something like that. I'd have to look. 1930, somewhere around there. And the past always gives us a bit of an insight into, where things are going. Like all I had to do was go back and look at 1968, 1996, and it's, sort of blood and guts and violence and war everywhere, right? And so these cycles, they tend to repeat themselves. They're not always the same, but there are definitely themes here. So you bring up a really great point, Alan. Like, how do we orient ourselves? And some people don't believe in the pole shift. What if we start to encounter something very similar where animals who have their own ability to navigate based on true north or the stars, which they do, birds certainly do, and or the navigational paths that they've trod over for thousands of years. But what if, like the animals, we had those sorts of things, but they're not there anymore? And how do we navigate through that? It's going to be very interesting.
The word like pole shift implies to me, from a geopolitical perspective, like a unipolar world to a multipolar world.
Yeah. I mean, there certainly is. That was the talk, right? That was the talk. Trump seems to want to have a version of a multipolar world, where there is a multipolar world, but Trump and the United States are the pole star, I guess.
Is it sponsored by Unilever?
Yeah, right, exactly.
How do
Yeah.
corporations play into this reality?
Oh, geez, God, yeah. That's a deep question, man. Really, really deep question. Like,
I can ask questions, I can't give answers.
How many corporations are there really? You know, there's probably only a handful, right? And everything else is just a subdivision of a subdivision of a subdivision.
Are corporations still people, or have we decided that corporations are not?
I think corporations, they're trying to move them into God status. That's what I think.
Interesting. Balderson, how do we ground ourselves? Any ideas?
Oofta. This is such a just weird time right now. And you know, the funny thing is, I was seeing an argument with some people on X or whatever the other day, I think, and they were saying that, you know, if or maybe it was on YouTube, I don't know. But they were saying that if manly men are so, or all these, you know, conservative guys are so manly, why is it only the more liberal guys that go hiking? And you know, the response was, yeah, but the liberal guys don't go hunting, fishing, camping, like, you know, doing all the other, you know, giant list of things, or just straight out live in the country like I do. And it's like these people, they go touch nature for a second, and they, you know, and take some pictures. They can brag to their friends that they did it, and they live after that in this just concrete jungle, and like everything's all in their heads. You've got to get out, you know, like on another show Marcus and I were on, I got into an argument with a guy because he was going on about how great Minecraft was. And I don't give a shit how shitty your materials are. As a kid, you're a million times better off going outside, pounding together a treehouse, seeing what works. And he's like, yeah, but you can't make a treehouse out of diamonds. You didn't either on fucking Minecraft. It's a fucking video game, man, and it did you no good. Like, go out and figure out building. And
You said Minecraft. Can I talk about Chicken Jockey?
Yes, do the Chicken Jockey.
Robert, are you familiar with a game called Minecraft?
Yeah, my kid played it for a while.
Do you know the guy named Notch who designed Minecraft in the Java code?
Is he like super rich or something like that?
He is now. He had, you know, he had some social media stuff, and he talked about things, and now he's completely separated from the Microsoft Corporation, which owns the Minecraft, M-I-N-E. I'm not saying Mindcraft, I'm saying mine, like not like the German word M-E-I-N. Okay, no more word games. Get to the point. Chicken Jockey. In this video game, it's pretty much the best virtual world that I've ever played. It's very simple graphic. It's in 3 dimensions, but the graphics are like Nintendo Entertainment System, very pixelated graphics. So your mind fills in a lot of the blanks because it's low resolution graphics. You can get higher resolution graphic packets. You can mod the game to your delight. That's part of the fun too, because it's a toy. You can play with it. It became very popular with young men, some of them on the spectrum, this type of thing.
Are we going fully gay, or are we just going to do the little gay with the Chicken Jockey thing?
The Chicken Jockey shows up in Minecraft when it's a player versus player, which is to say a civil war. So when all the rules are engage any combat anytime you want, the Chicken Jockey shows up and it becomes a PvP arena, like a player versus player arena. That's in the game. That's the lore, the legend of Minecraft. The guy known as Steve is the eponymous player that everyone's Steve when they play Minecraft, single player. And are you familiar with the Minecraft movie?
I've heard of it.
With Jack Black. So Jack Black, who was Bowser in the Nintendo movie, by the way.
Right.
So video game connection. He shows up and he plays Steve in the Minecraft movie. So young men, mostly young men, were very excited about this meme-worthy moment in the movie, in the theater, in the real world, where they were allowed to express themselves freely. They would purchase popcorn, not to eat, but to wait for the moment when the magic word, the kill phrase, is uttered on the screen by the character. So when the word chicken jockey is said, everyone jumps up out of their seat, throws their popcorn in the air, and just starts jumping on each other's shoulders. People were bringing in real chickens, live chickens, into the theater and throwing chickens around. And then people were recording what was going on.
Wow.
So I don't know if this is all organic or if the Minecraft marketing department said, we're going to create some excitement. Don't know if it's chicken or egg situation, but the chicken jockey led to this sort of moment where young men were able to leave their mom's home, go to a public space, and then just go crazy. And then from that phenomenon, this meme-worthy moment went to McDonald's, where people were having chicken jockey moments at McDonald's restaurants, causing certain McDonald's restaurants to have to close at sundown or earlier and set curfews in certain areas because people were doing chicken jockey PvP arena stuff in the McDonald's restaurants.
Wow. How long ago was this?
This spring.
Yeah, it was just a couple months ago, yeah.
Which is honestly the only time McDonald's has had actual chicken in it in years.
It's fair. That's fair.
That's funny. Yeah.
We used to play capture the flag in a super Walmart with boxes of Life cereal as the flag. It was like Original Life and Cinnamon Life, and we would split up into teams and like hide the cereal box in one particular department, and
That's
then
creative.
go seek and destroy throughout the Walmart until we found it or we got kicked out.
That's creative.
It was a small town with a big Walmart. we didn't have anything better to do.
I like it. You're making, it's sort of like, Carl Jung had this theory that since young men no longer had rites of passage, like what would happen is that the psyche would create experiences that would force the young man to go through some kind of rite of passage. And it could be anything from getting too drunk and crashing your car and all of a sudden having to come to Jesus wake up moment, right? Whatever materials were available.
I have a picture of a frat boys meeting here.
There you go.
This is your customer
death
service
defying right there. Death defying.
Yeah. Is that the Patel frat?
They'll give you matzo ball soup, but they'll cook it with their feet. That's
so.
Steve, this guy's in the Navy. This other guy's the
one
Superman.
time, I almost had all my shackles taken. It was almost the death of me.
So I brought that up, Steve, because that like you were making do with materials that you had, right, at your disposal. You didn't have a field or anything like that.
Well, we had graduated from the dirt clod fights where we were packing rocks into dirt clods, and
right.
at that point we weren't like kids anymore. We were trying to find somewhere in between getting arrested and not, and we're trying to like figure out what kind of mild mannered havoc could we cause. And this is probably one of like the tamer things that I did in high school, but it was fun as heck, man. It really was. We're talking about like crashing a Walmart at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's like 7 other people in it, and it's you and 14 of your ne'er-do-well friends split up into 2 teams. playing capture the flag for a box of Life cereal. Yeah, which could turn into full contact sport. It could. Yeah, it didn't always. Yeah, but it could. The
That was just
potential was there.
unorganized. Just happened. What do they call it? Like a flash mob situation. People just showed up.
Yeah, well, so what happened is we would get kicked out of a place called Edgewater Park because there were people like, hanging out and allegedly participating in indulgence of alcoholic beverages underage, and or consuming other substances that were illegal, and eventually you'd get chased out by the cops. And so it wasn't too far from Edgewater to where Walmart was. You'd have to stop, take a lap around another shopping center, because that's when you would cruise to just drive your car in a circle for no reason for 3 hours and maybe get in a fight or feel a titty, and like that was it, and then you go home.
Man titty,
and that was fun,
or woman titty.
Whatever suits your fancy, man. I'm not here to judge.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you're in a fight, sometimes it's the man titty. Otherwise, probably it is. But you know what? When that kind of gets a hold of you, it's just like the bulls outside. If they can't get laid, they're gonna fight. They need one of the F's, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What Gigi Allen say? Right? Punch, fight, fuck. That was it. Yeah.
I'm thinking of like the Society for Creative Anachronism in the past, the Merry Pranksters, the Carrie Thornley group, and now in 2025, I think the most extreme thing a young person can do is drive around listening to the new single from, his name is EA, like YE, I think, and doing Roman salutes.
Right. Yeah.
I think the most extreme thing a young person can do right now is not have a cell phone, get married young, have kids, and decouple from the bullshit.
Mormons?
I don't know, man.
So Mormons?
No, I didn't say like put on a suit and tie and get on a bicycle and go solicit door to door freaking. Hey, there were magic treasures inside this magic hat that I found that only I can see and read. And no, you can't double check them. No, there's no double checking it. No, it's just me. I need to bang your wife.
Can I double check with you guys real quick? Got a question. Can I ask about the R
what
word?
The hat says.
Can I ask Robert about the R word?
Yeah.
Resacralization.
Oh no! You are just a shit stir tonight, bigger than shit. I caught that one just a minute ago too. That was clever. It was clever, very smooth.
Tell him what I'm talking about before I have to bite my tongue or put my foot in my mouth.
Some of our, it seems like the. Like in the last year, the truther or conspiracy or whatever you want to call it community, that genre has really had a shakeup, right? You had the whole final experiment thing, and then you had a whole ton of little splinter groups that appeared. A lot of them very new, because obviously 2020 brought in such a big glut of conspiracy folks, where prior to 2000 even, it was like 12 of us listening to, like when you made the Art Bell reference, there's like 12 of us are like, oh yeah, I remember Art Bell. I also need to take pills to sleep well at night because it hurts. Like that's it's that crowd. Like fuck. So since then, and especially 2020 expanded because obviously there was the government shenanigans were so.
Well, also TikTok explodes around 2020, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
And TikTok eventually gives us Ian Carroll.
Oh right? Yeah, that guy's. how on the nose are you going to make yourself look like an agent? I don't know. Like, come on now. You're either a 80s porn star or an agent to have that mustache, bro. Like, that's just the end of the story. Like,
Yeah.
And then he gets on Joe Rogan for why?
So Ian Carroll is this phenomenon, right? And he goes from basically making TikTok videos and looking at ingredients on like juice boxes and cereal so that moms could better understand what the ingredients were.
Kind of like part of the Maha movement.
He's totally Maha. He is kind of spotted and groomed by Nicole Shanahan. And I'm pretty firm believer that she's his sponsor. Like she gives him money to do things. And through Nicole Shanahan, he has like interesting connections with people like Peter Thiel and some of the Silicon Valley people, right? And some of which he can be critical of, and other times he is curiously silent about. And he goes from TikTok, where he accrues millions of followers, follow the money, right? Follow the money. And he's not really adding anything new to the conversation. You know, he's just able to aggregate it in a way that people that have short attention spans can understand it. So he becomes this sort of like king aggregator. That's really what he does. Like, you know, he starts talking about, and I would watch him, you know, follow him on Twitter. And, you know, he starts to talk about, you know, programming and music and the 1960s. And it's like, so when the fuck did you become, you know, kind of a trusted source, you know, on Dave McGowan's material? Well, you read some of Dave McGowan's stuff.
But won't say Dave McGowan's name.
Eventually he was forced to.
Yeah, and I know personally the two people that forced him to do it. Yeah.
So one of Ian Carroll's superpowers is that I think he has close to a photographic memory. And he's able to read material, retain it. And he's the son of two college professors. So he's not a dummy. But he's not a dummy. And he's able to kind of regurgitate material. And he does it in a way where he's kind of friendly, right? Like he's not Alex Jones. You know, he's not going to get in your face and scream. He's very approachable. In fact, I was at this event here in Texas. It was one of these sort of, you know, gathering of the tribe sort of thing. Really cool piece of land. I mean, Ben, you would actually like what they're doing out there. They're growing their own food. They got their own cattle. They have their own restaurant. Their own brewery. Pretty impressive, actually.
Nice.
And so Alex Zeck is the guy who runs this event, right?
Oh, he's real good friends with Beth Martins.
Yeah. So I went out there, and I was duly impressed. Danny was there, Danny Katz. I hung out with Danny for most of the day. She spoke, and there it is. Word up. Yep. Danny's brilliant. Have you ever seen her do her presentation live with a group of people? She's fantastic.
No, I see her on Emily's channel sometimes. We obviously we're pretty good friends with Emily.
Yeah. When she is in person, she's great. She's able to run people through the material, clear, coherent, right? Just a fantastic presenter. So guess who's at this event? Ian Carroll. And he's like the final speaker. So Danny said, look, there's Ian Carroll. I said, here, take my camera. Get a picture of me and Ian Carroll. Right? So it wasn't like a complete troll moment. So I have this picture of me. Ian Carroll is a large human.
Yeah, he's half a Nephilim. He's like 6'5".
He's 6'5". The guy goes to the gym. He's cut, right? Looks like he misses leg nights. but he's still, as a physical being, he's fairly impressive. Right? So you add all of that up, and then you throw him into the internet, and you got your next Alex Jones.
Well, let me
Right?
add a little bit
Yeah.
more to that too. Prior to the let me read ingredients thing, he got TikTok famous during the whole GameStop thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's where he came out of, was
GameStop or gang stock.
GameStop.
But didn't he steal somebody's material with that?
So there are multiple different things that you can point to that helped him gain his popularity that it went uncredited, to be generous, and I'm certainly less generous when it's my show.
It's kind of like the Dave McGowan thing, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people's work that he recited that he failed to give credit for. Now, D.E. Saccone in the chat here is saying Derek Bros, who's a buddy of mine, he's interviewed him a handful of times. And God bless Bros for the patience as far as that goes, and his ability to just keep a straight face and keep it even keel when they're having these conversations. But Ian always walks away from it, looking totally disingenuous, out of his element, kind of looking like he's trying to suck up to people so they'll ignore what he's saying on his own show. Plus, he does a show with Justin Trudeau's half brother and a fucking former Blackwater guy. Now, it's just all of those things isolated, sure, but when you put them all together, plus the reality that he's been living in Los Angeles for at least the last 6 or 7 years with no show until a couple of years ago, no TikTok account until a couple of years ago. He had a clothing company that nobody ever bought anything from or had heard of until he had the TikTok. But you can still afford LA rent? Like that, I don't know, dude. I live in the Bay Area. It's, I know how not cheap it is here. I've lived in Santa Cruz County. It's, LA's right on par with that, and it freaking sucks, dude. I mean, you're talking about $2,000 a month for a bedroom, that you get a shared kitchen with and a shared bathroom with, and a 3-bedroom house with maybe 4 or 5 other people.
Are you suggesting 5 letters? USAID?
I'm not suggesting anything. I would like an explanation for it more than, first, before I even have anything to suggest. It's just, if you have an online clothing company with no advertising, that nobody's on any major shows or no bands, no comics, no concert goers, nobody's wearing anything that you make, how are you paying your LA rent?
I think I could jump into the ring here a little bit. You guys, I asked you earlier if you were on Threads, and you're kind of like, well, what's the point of being on Threads? That's owned by Meta, so Facebook, and then Facebook purchases Instagram and puts it under the Meta umbrella, and then they start a Twitter clone called Threads. So it's basically like short text blurbs that you post, and it's all under the Meta umbrella. So how do you get users to join your new social network? Well, if you have an Instagram account, which everybody does, you just install the app and migrate your data over, and now you have a Threads account. Now, Threads doesn't have content, so how does Threads fill up its content drought? By paying people to post. So Threads was paying accounts to post. So there was a financial incentive reward mechanism. That's one idea. Put that on the table. Consider another idea. there's a separate class of social media influencer, the person who wants to be the social media influencer and they want to receive the payment. They are a content creator. They work tirelessly in the meme mines, making memes and posting them on social media as content creators. But they complain about being shadow banned and not getting exposure. So then looking over to Snapchat, which has a program where you can pay to promote your public posts. So there's two classes of people. Those who are paid for putting content out, and then everybody else who has to pay out of pocket for their content to be seen by anybody at all.
Mostly by bots. If you're
Yes.
paying for it, I got to imagine.
By AILLM web bots, the spiders that crawl over the internet looking for your files, ingesting all of your data, and then spitting it back out to you.
Yeah, basically just giving you views.
Well, essentially, I'll add Reddit, being this big platform, the front page of the internet. Years and years and years of content. All of that stuff has been sucked up into these AI large language models, these algorithmic computer code things. And now we're at the point where you can go on Threads and witness an AI bot posting content to a Threads account, interacting with a third and fourth and fifth AI bot who are retweeting each other, interacting with each other, and there's no human involved with this process at all. So for humans who are not NPCs, they're actual humans posting content, riding motorcycles, doing travel vlogs, putting content out.
Sorry.
Those people are having to pay the platforms for their stuff to get any exposure. So it's like freedom of speech was the conversation. Then it became freedom of reach. Dangerous content can only go so far.
Right.
But now we're at the third phase where it's pay to play. If you don't pay to promote your content, whatever it is, nobody sees it. And this is the long-winded circular way to meander about and say, well, maybe that's how Ian Carroll on TikTok, because TikTok had an incentive program too, where they were dispersing funds to certain creators who were in the creator program. Now, Google was the first to do this with YouTube when they had a creator program. I was a creator in the YouTube AdSense program. I was doing shampoo reviews and no sulfates in the Laurel-free shampoos, and I had wet hair, and I'd be like, this is great shampoo. And I did get a check one time because I talked about the proper type of shampoo. So if there's brand-friendly, brand-safe, brand-promoting content saying, I love L'Oreal, it's, what is it saying? Baphomet, ooh la la, look at my shiny hair. I love this shampoo. Then I'm on the good side. But then I started hanging out with Balderson and Steve and Robert Phoenix, and now I'm on the other side of the tracks, I think, is where I'm at.
Well, you bring up an interesting point about TikTok, and it is the algorithmic driver of TikTok, right? So we were talking about the chicken, now we'll talk about the egg. What's driving the algorithm? Is it the content that's driving the algorithm, or is the algorithm driving the content? Right? And at what point did somebody, maybe at TikTok, say, we're going to drive Ian Carroll? And who made that decision to drive Ian Carroll at TikTok? And was that a financially driven choice on TikTok's part? Did somebody pay TikTok to put him in the algorithm? It's a very interesting conversation about how people kind of get exposed and broken and brought to this more mainstream level. And I would tend to think that somebody at TikTok was driving the algorithm. For whatever, maybe Nicole Shanahan, like seen him, who knows, said, here, I'm going to send some money TikTok's way, drive this algorithm, this guy. so that he can get exposed. And I feel like that's really the key here. Who's driving the algorithm?
Sure. If we're looking for receipts or possible real world incidents where this information was revealed a little bit, are you familiar with Twitch?
Yeah.
Twitch.tv, where gamers broadcast games, and in for some reason women wearing low cut shirts got more views playing or not playing video games. Don't know. They had a situation where they were paying partners. They'd say, you're a Twitch partner, right? You've achieved partnership with Twitch, and if you're on good terms and you're brand safe, that doesn't necessarily mean family safe or like Christian or Mormon safe. It's just someone who is an influencer who can stream and play video games. They had leaked lists of payments and top payouts for certain producers, but within this leaking content was like, these people are on the green light list, so let them stream. If a nipple slips out, don't shut the stream down, keep it going. But on smaller channels who weren't on the green light, the good boy, good girl list, they had stricter regulations and their streams would be cut off more quickly. So they revealed that there was this sort of like green lane, the fast pass lane. Then there's sort of the middle lane, but then there's also the red light lane. So if you're driving in a car, every light is going to be a red light for you. It's going to turn yellow and it's going to be red. So you're going to have to stop at every red light. But there are certain players in the race who get green lights, fast pass. It's like all the traffic has to pull over and give them priority.
So
Right. Yeah.
this thing that I've been having going on with YouTube, and I don't know, because YouTube's done some changes recently, I think is why I caught this. And then also, so my band channel obviously isn't the one under just Benjamin Ballerson, which is what we're streaming to now. That's not the one that, you know, I was doing all that. This was mostly just farm stuff and, you know, whatever off-grid projects that I did. So I will post videos, and especially if it's got like a baby, like an alpaca, baby ducks, baby cows, baby whatever, people go nuts over it. Also my poop videos when I'm making my garden fertilizer. What I don't show in there is all the fucking flies you get from it. It's not annoying. Anyways, YouTube a bunch of these, they'll take off and start going viral. Like they'll have like over 1,000 views in like 15 minutes. They'll just go. And then literally YouTube will put a dead stop to it and then start subtracting my views by the hundreds. You're like, and I've been screenshotting it, and like I'll have like 850 views, and then 5 minutes later I'll be down to like 630, and like you're like, oh, interesting. And this was not something that I ever actively saw where I could screenshot that before. You know, back when in 2020, when I started taking the real heat for, you know, getting shadow banned, things like that, because of speaking out against the cough and the things like that. You knew it was happening. Like on a daily basis, I'm losing hundreds and hundreds of subs. Like you're like, wow. And even now, like with the sub count, that's something that, you know, you can complain about it, but people are never going to believe that. They're going to be like, oh, you suck, so you're going to say that they're against you. And, you know,
right, yeah.
Like my sub count, I can gain 6 people on any given day. And if
the subs don't matter anymore.
Lose 7.
They don't matter. What matters now is the algorithm, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you, and I know all of you have experienced this. You have one thing that you watch out of curiosity, and it may not be something that you have all that much interest in, but for whatever reason, you watch it, and then you don't even have to restart your computer. The algorithm starts to get populated by related content. It's that fast now, right? It's and some of the channels might be big, some of the channels may not be big. It just depends on the algorithm. And, like, good luck cracking that code and getting YouTube to, get horny for your content. So it throws it up there so that somebody who might watch a video on, I don't know, poop or composting, all of a sudden you show up then, right?
Right. So
But
here's
funny enough,
idea.
from the word horny, one of Marcus and I were just looking at this, trying to crack this code.
Yep.
And one of the videos that has gotten continual views that got a lot was horny bulls. And it was, some damage to a fence. It wasn't really anything about, like, you never saw like anything like sexual or anything. It was the bull. There was heifers in this pen. The bulls literally took this, really nice metal gate and turned it into a taco. They're like, no, I need some. And that's just the damage that bulls do on the regular. Now, one of the things that 2020 also, again, I wanted you to kind of talk about was it seems like a lot of these breakaways now have become very culty. And so it seems like a lot of the people that I associated with in 2020, there's groups of them that didn't, but there's groups that broke off, and the ones that broke off, like interacting individually, they got super, super culty. And that's pretty fucking wild, in my opinion, because most of us in the community were very anti-cult, and you see them actually starting cults.
Do you have any examples? I have one in my head. But do you have any examples?
On your show, I came and talked about the what most would consider the bear cult, and Owen, Marty Leeds, if you've seen some of his most recent work and his
Yurt McGirt.
Yeah,
a man who lives in a yurt.
His contract for his disciples and all this, and like we looked through it because I've been friends with Marty for a long time.
I'm gonna lawyer you, Ben. It's called
and we
a
looked through his
members agreement.
and it was disturbing.
It's a community members agreement, and they agree to only say good things about the group, and they agree to not talk about what they talk about in the group. It's not quite Fight Club because fights are not allowed in the club.
You can't question the leader. Any type of criticism's not allowed. Like, I mean, it reads really fucked up. And at the end of it, and you can't talk about anything from in the group, outside the group. So you put a non-disclosure on it. Also, how very truther is that? Like, that's super weird, dude. Why are all you people doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Pluto, again, this all started with Pluto and Capricorn. Those final degrees of Pluto and Capricorn, which is sort of the penultimate moment of corporatization and the corporatocracy. And I think a lot of these really, I don't know if you call them charismatic, but clearly there were individuals who presented content in a way that was very polarizing. Like, Benjamin's polarizing, right? And when you get into polarization, polarization is a technique that's used with MK Ultra, right? Like, when they want to partition somebody's brain, they have an event that polarizes their consciousness, right? Like, so if you're a young kid and you're witnessing some stranger kill your dog in front of you, right? Like, what does that do? Cracks your skull, right? You polarize, you compartmentalize because you can't really handle like the information. So polarization is one of the keystones for creating cults, and the polarization exists even when you're inside the cult. So you have somebody who has polarizing content, and it's almost always an us versus them, right? Always us versus them. And then once you're in the group, then you have this, again, it's like this very polarized community. And you start to enclave, you start to, they did this with Archaics. Like, this is somebody who is one of the people that we talked about at a certain point.
I do want to ask you about calendrics.
Calendrics.
The study of calendars, I think, is how Mr. Archaics, Jason Brashears
Yeah.
is talking about.
Yeah. So I'm not completely familiar with his material. I'm more familiar with the personality and the people that surrounded themselves with him, which became very cultic, in my opinion. But calendrics is, if I'm not mistaken, you can take like a 100-year cycle and go back 100 years, and you can see a mirror event for the time that you're looking at, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I can tie this kind of together and relating it a little bit here. Since we did mention Archaics, Calendrics, he has established his own timeline. He says that the ancient AI system thing has a reboot or reset, and he calls it like a Phoenix cycle. And your name is showing as Robert Phoenix. Are you just a fan of Arizona? What's the deal here?
Yeah. So my birth name, it's a fine birth name, but I never felt really comfortable saying it. Right? It was like, it was always awkward for me to say it, but it's a fine name. And then I was doing tarot readings in 1996. I was going around the country, and I was at the whole Life Expo in Austin. I had a booth, and I called my booth and my little, this is what I called Phoenix Rising, because I'm a Scorpio rising, and Phoenix and Scorpio or Scorpion is very similar. And this guy sat down across from me. He goes, "Oh yeah, I knew a Bob Phoenix in Arizona." Go figure. He said, "Are you related to him?" I said, "No, but I kind of like that name. Maybe I'll go with that." So I just kind of rolled with that, right? And it seems to have worked. Again, I like my birth name fine, but this sounds a little bit better. And what's interesting is that I had a symbol that I had used for a long time. It's like a phoenix symbol I found online. And then when Jason became popular, he started using the same symbol. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, is it just by chance? Probably saw it, liked it, but it just felt weird. It's like, man, I had that symbol years ago, and now you're using my symbol. Anyway, that's another just aside. But yeah, so there has been a lot of cultic behavior, and it's kind of like jumped out of the screen, right? And now we're dealing with sort of MAGA as cultic behavior. And God forbid, you question Trump, and you question some of the things he's doing. And it gets back to that Spider-Man meme that I was talking about earlier. And one of the things that cults do, it's one of their key tools, is ostracization. So if somebody
turning members into ostriches,
something like that, yes,
ostrich eggs,
yeah, something like that, because now all of a sudden they're not like anybody else, right? No, but they ostracize people. Like, it's ostracization and shunning. And
after they've already separated you from the world, so you've naturally ostracized the world,
right?
For you to be ostracized by them means you're by yourself,
right? So I have an interesting story around this, and I can completely speak to how effective this is. And one of the groups that use this as a psychological tool to keep people in line. So back in the day, I lived in Oakland, and they had a resale place. It wasn't like something. It was like a resale place, right? People would go in. A lot of the time, they just donated shit. I think it was mostly donations, and it was run by this group called the Uhuru House, right? And I would go down there, like the
Please
Grand
spell,
Theater.
Please spell that, because there's UHURU Uhuru.
Is that based off of a Star Trek character?
No, it's based off an African tribe.
There's a book. There's a bookstore with that same name, right next, or it used to be. I mean, this is years ago, but it was huge and it was wild because if you've ever been down to Lake Street, Minneapolis, this is the ghetto of Minneapolis. It's, you know, just a dump. Well, this used bookstore that there was Uncle Edgar's sci-fi and Uncle Hugo's fantasy. So, you know, wizards and dragons and knights and shit. And this thing was huge, and you could trade your books back in, and it would only cost me like $20 a week this way to re-up my book supply. And it was super nice. Well, the very first time I went to go find that, I was the only bookstore I could find that had this exact same name, and it was definitely a black bookstore. And I was spent so many times looking around at it, and I'm like, that don't look right. That don't look like no fantasy bookstore. Like, that's weird. And this hooker walks up to me, and she's like, what are you looking for, babe? And I'm like, Uncle Hugo's fantasy books. She's like, you sure you looking for books? I'm like, yeah.
Was she trying to sell you some
Same
Gorean literature?
Yeah, she was trying
GORs.
She was trying to interest me in some other literature. Yes, not fantasy literature.
I asked if this Huru was a Star Trek character because Nyota Uhura is a black woman who played a Starfleet officer in the original Star Trek, and her name is Nyota.
Nichelle Nichols was the actress. First interracial kiss on television, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Her and Bill Shatner had to have the first, right? So this place, I'd go down there, I'd look for stereo equipment or, office supply stuff or chairs or whatever. And it was run by 3 Jews. 2 of them were married. The other one wasn't. And one of them, she kind of reminded me of Emily a little bit. And I'd go there a lot, right? And she'd come, she said, Robert, they don't know what the hell we're doing here. They have no idea what we're doing here. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, this is amazing. I'm like, I'm trying to think, what the fuck are you doing here? Right? So one day there was this guy that came in and he was buying something. He looked a little, how do I say this? Impaired. Let's put it that way. Impaired. And he
the R word?
You look close.
Like down?
A little bit. You're in the spectrum.
Okay.
Spectrum, right?
Okay.
And he didn't have enough money to buy something. He was short by $5 or $6. Right. And I saw he was short. I said, yeah, I got it, man. I'll take care of it for you. So I gave him like $6. I said, yeah, if you want, just drop the money off when you can. I'll come back in here. And that got their attention, right? They're like, oh, well, he's a very altruistic fellow, isn't he? So they decide to take the mask off, right? And they give me a copy of their newsletter. I'm like, oh, you have a newsletter? Oh, it's called The Burning Spear, right? That was the newsletter. So I said, well, thanks. I take it home. The next day I'm sitting down. I start reading this thing. The Uhuru House is a full-blown communist cell. Like, that's what they are. They're full-blown. That's why she came up and said, Robert, they don't know what the hell we're doing here. Right? They had a full-blown communist cell. And their goal was to, overthrow the power structure, right? So they were organizing amongst the black community in Oakland. They were playing the sort of the race/class thing, but more race and class. And I'm reading this thing, the Burning Spear, and there was this one couple who I guess stepped out of line. They must have said something or done something independently, which wasn't approved by the party. They spent about half that newsletter ostracizing them and shunning them. To your point, Ben, this is exactly what you're talking about. Spend all that time becoming part of the in-group, right? And that in-group is very insular and very polarized, right? It stands for values that are very different than the dominant paradigm around it. And then once you're out of that in-group, boy, you're really fucked, you're in Siberia. So I'm like, this is interesting. These are the tactics that the Soviets and the Chinese Maoists would use. And especially when they had their Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward, you had all these kids basically doing the same thing to their parents, ostracizing their parents, and then shunning. The parents get shunned. And this is a behavior modification tool that cults use. And clearly, there are elements of this in MAGA. I see it. I totally see it. Like, oh, well, Tucker Carlson, see you later. Goodbye. Right? We know you now. We're going to ostracize you. We're going to shun you. Or Candace Owens or whomever. And it's fucking psychotic. Right? And there was a time when Barack Obama, when he was president, and all this racial shit was going off, right? Like, it was all happy, whether it was Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown or Freddie Gray or whomever. Obama never came out and said, hey, look, we're one country. We're one country. We're one people. And I'm not going to stand for any of this, whether it's the police or whether it's the Black community. I understand you may have a grievance, you have a right to protest, but you can't do it violently. If you do it violently, we're going to have a very different discussion here. We're Americans. Never had that conversation. So what happens when we don't have the conversation? It enables everything that follows after it. Trump needs to have the conversation with MAGA, right? He needs to have the conversation. Look, we may have differing opinions and points of view here about America and what makes America great. But let me make this clear. We're Americans and we are one family, and we can have family squabbles. But at the end of the day, we're going to work this out and we're going to be united and not divided. He hasn't done that. Instead, what does he do? He throws kerosene on the fire. He goes after Thomas Massey and spends 300 words on Truth Social, ripping Massey a new asshole. And Massey's beloved, man. He's beloved by, real conservatives. Ben, Thomas Massey is like a version of you. Carves out his home, literally out of his own fucking land. The trees and the rocks, everything, right?
Massey's a beast.
He is a total beast. Like, it's like, I got so much respect for that guy. And every time Trump tries to take a dump on him, and Trump said, look, we're going to primary him, and I'm going to, Kentucky, and I'm going to go there and speak. Well, good luck. AIPAC tried to kick him out 3 other times. And every time Trump opens his mouth about Massey, he gets $100,000 richer. Right? So this is what I'm talking about, this cultic behavior. And it serves a purpose because it magnetizes the people inside to circle the wagons and become tighter, right? I actually learned this when I was a kid. One day when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was kind of a chunky kid. And back then, the girls would chase the boys, the ones that they thought were cute, right? I never got chased. So I don't know what got into my head, right? But one day I'm sitting at the lunch table. There are 4 girls around me and one unsuspecting dude that I'm going to pull a cult tactic on. And I said to these girls, I said, I'm starting a club and you're all in it, but he's not. And you know what happened? I got my ass chased around the playground during lunch, right? And that's how cults work. You have an in-group, you have a definable other that is not allowed, and that in-group, because they're part of the in-group, something comes over them, right? They become fanatical in some ways. Like, I was the object of their desire for about 30 minutes at lunch. It was one of the greatest days of my life. And then, the spell was broken. And I feel like what you're talking about, Ben, there's microcosms, there's macrocosms. And with this Pluto and Aquarius, which we're moving into now, we're going to see quite possibly the destruction of cults, right? And we'll also see the rise of new and different ones. And some of the ones that we're going to see, in my estimation, are going to be less culty and more of an amalgamation of spirits that are magnetized towards one another and wind up doing sort of spontaneous things. They're kind of a how would I say this? Kind of an organized anarchy in some ways, but the organization isn't really coming from one central figure, right? It's coming from somewhere inside of this group, and then it begins to
maybe aligning themselves around a set of morals or rules instead of around a figure.
I think it's more vibe. It's more vibe.
We talked to that guy. He's got a YouTube channel. He goes by VYBE. He made a
our last guest called himself Vibe for the
internet. I asked him a question on his YouTube channel because he had put a video out after speaking with us, and I asked him about accountability, and he had an answer to say about that. I said, what is the role of accountability in greater culture beyond the confines of a religious group? He's coming from a Christian perspective, and he kind of answers the question saying that's an interesting question because accountability is foundational to society, both within religion and beyond it. In Christianity, believers are ultimately accountable to God. And he goes on to say it's kind of a complex thing. We are kind of in this stalemate with Orthodox Christianity brothers, calling them the Ortho Bros. That's one thing I want to put on the table. But veering back around to look at
drag Robert into the Ortho Bro, right? I don't know that he even wants a piece of that.
Are you talking about Jay Dyer? Is that what you're talking
about? We don't talk.
Well,
about
there's a group of them. The big name ones are Jay Dyer and Andrew Wilson and Jim Bob. And Steve walked in, and he didn't just poke the hornet's nest today, and it's been a building thing for quite some time. Jay Dyer, he's again, I'm friends with Freeman Fly, and I know the whole backstory. You're never going to convince me Jay Dyer's anything but a puke. And so when he bailed on the debate, and I was being polite before that, because actually I thought, and Steve also thought that those two were friends. They've been on numerous shows together. He's been on Steve's show, numerous times. And so then when he backed out, what he did was he picked a weird fight with Steve, threw a big bitchy temper tantrum. And then it's like, I'm not going to come on your show and debate. And it's like, so that was super weird. Well, then Andrew Wilson agreed to debate me last October. And I sent him a few reminders, and the dude just, he at first he was cool. And he's like, yeah, let's do this. And then it's been nothing since. They won't talk to us at all. I went on a show with a bunch of their little followers and just wrecked those guys. And they literally took the show down and moved it to private where you can't see it at all. Yeah, just wrecked them. And then I talked to Jim Bob, and Jim Bob and I, we don't have a personal history together. When that thing happened,
this is Jim Bob from the Owen world, right?
Yes. And so when I made that initial video, calling Owen out, I did mention Jim Bob, but in a positive way, because Owen, I said, I don't really know.
You were kind of sticking up for him.
Yeah, I stuck up for him.
Yeah.
And so we know a bunch of the same people, have a bunch of the same beefs with the same people. So even though we aren't haven't really personally interacted that much, we have a lot of parallels. And so him and I have been having a back and forth email, and it's been very nice and very friendly. I like him quite a bit, and he's not set a date, and this has been since February and kept not setting it. Well, his partner was getting married. We asked him if he wanted to bring a partner, and he did. and that way, you know, it's it's not, you know, a 3-on-1. Well, obviously one person is supposed to be the moderator. So either way it would be it. So then it's 2-on-2. Works nice. And they hadn't gotten around, and I've asked him numerous times, and you know, it seemed pretty dodgy. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, but it's stretching out real long. And so Steve today made a shit talk tweet, and Steve's got a pretty big X account. And so, you know, what you don't know about Steve is that guy knows he's been around forever. Like, he was the biggest Rockfin channel for a very long time. He's the guy that the Whitney Webb came on his show to break the Epstein story. Like, he knows like every whistleblower, all the things you're talking about with Palantir and all that. Steve is nuts deep in all of that, knows all the biggest players, has all these people on his show. But Steve finally gets a hold of their attention. Well, Jim Bob, and I expected it would be Jim Bob. It catches Jim Bob's attention, and we haven't shit talked about Jim Bob at all. I don't know what provoked Steve to do it today, but Steve did it. And Jim Bob responded. Well, once Jim Bob started responding, that, you know, set off the fucking flames of fucking Gondor for the Ortho Bros, right? And they all came fucking charging, including Andrew Wilson. And that turned into a big hullabaloo, you know. And I can't hardly keep up with the shit because I'm not that good of an X user or anything. I've only actively been using it since October. And that, when I say actively, that's like once or twice a month I go in there and dick around. And so being in a big old firefight with a whole bunch of people and my name's tagged everywhere, I'm like, fuck. Where's this? Which one is this? It's not like on Facebook where it's all in one thread, just and you can read it almost storybook style. I'm just not good with computery stuff. But yeah, that's, you know, because in today's push, so one of the movements that we've been tracking, no, you cannot get in front of the camera. One of the movements we've been tracking is, with all the chaos, there's a large sector that, very similar to the Promethean fire story, are like, no, this is for the gods. Free will is for the gods. Higher thoughts for the gods. It's not for us. And they desperately want somebody to follow. And so you're seeing and somebody very stern and strict, not your new agey, anything goes. They want stern and strict. So you're seeing a giant rise in the Orthodox Christianity specifically. And the Orthodox, they can't even read the Bible and understand what it says. They can't be contentious about it in any way. Whatever the upper people in your thing think, that's what you think, and you're just a fucking parrot, you know. And even if what they say doesn't make any sense, well, then yeah, it's because you're a dummy. And it's so, and that type of lifestyle, and then also they feel like there's a manliness that comes from that.
That is the thing that I was eventually gonna land on, right? Is this idea of the patriarch. And
right.
The patriarch is really big in the Orthodox Church. And I don't know. I would take a stab and a guess that a lot of these guys probably had either no or weak father figures in their lives. That's
yeah, no strong male figures around them, and so they're desperately seeking one. They're in a world where all the things that women said they want men to be, that turned them into these lesbians, basically, like weak emotional fops of men. You're like, you know, and the girls are like, yeah, we aren't turned on by that. Well, why did you listen to her, you dummy? She didn't even know where she wanted to eat, and she said she's hungry. Get the fuck out of here. And so all these guys, they want the strong men. And I'm not even sure that a lot of that can even be passed on. Like, you know, like if you hear the Ortho Bros argue, they're going on about, you know, 80%, only like 30 or 40% or something like that, or even 20 maybe. I can't remember. It's not one of my points. Of men pass their DNA on historically. It's an extremely low number. And I don't know how to explain that. I've watched dudes that seem like good dudes, that girls, there's like a force field and girls just doing, doing and don't want nothing to do with it. And then some dudes you basically like, I talk about like when I used to go to Renfest and go to these fair shit, you just basically lay out the hammer and you're like, who wants to sit on it? And you pick which one out of the line wants to. I don't know how to transition from one to the other. So I don't know that they could even teach that type of thing. But what we wanted to do is, we're trying to provide a voice where you don't got to be the Andrew Tate or the Orthodox weird Christian that can't think for themselves in order to be a manly man, to be in this structured, more conservative, like old school family society. And I would even say, and this is part of why I think they don't want to debate me, because I've got very valid points, that the best parts of their culture came from Germanics. When you read Germania, you look at like take and look at German marriage. Fucking Caesar, as his enemy, is like, this is their most noble trait. They are so strict about marriage. There's no infidelity. They don't rape other people. They don't have affairs with other people. It's one man, one wife. And there's things that are the better parts of Christianity. Well, that literally were always Germanic society. And when we're talking about Christianity today with the Western world, we're talking about white culture. And so that culture was already amongst the white people. That wasn't something the Christians brought who weren't white. Like, that's something that they had to take in to their culture in order to pass on their religion to the outside world, very Alexander the Great style, where now their religion is now fitting, which is part of why they had to take on our holidays, take on our traditions, things like that, which is why like things like Christmas don't make sense. Santa Claus doesn't make sense. Christmas trees, reindeers, none of that makes sense for a fucking story out of Israel. There ain't no fucking reindeer in Israel, people. Like, so all that symbology was smooshed into it in order for the white culture to be subsumed by this desert religion. And they don't want to have that argument. And they like arguing with leftists who have no fucking grounding, no real, everything's super wishy-washy. None of them really understands that they're all just theosophists. And the Theosophical Society has been pushing this mush together crap version of culture since Blavatsky, and that the feminization of culture also came with that, with Alice Bailey and becoming the religious head of the UN. And then the UN, part of what you were talking to earlier, then pushes the out of Africa theory, including the very loud feminine. And so then this goes to why the very loud black woman is now held up in the hierarchy as the highest.
Right. Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. People are really hungry for some kind of moral ground, because we went through the 60s, and the 60s were kind of the height of do as thou wilt, right? And we come off of the 60s, and it's kind of sobering, right? And people who went through some of the consciousness trips in the 60s figure out how to commodify it, and they start the human potential movement in the 70s. And so you have the rise of people like Werner Erhard and Est, and Scientology really takes off in the 70s. The 70s are a really interesting time, like very, very interesting time astrologically. And then that kind of reaches its apotheosis. And we hit the 90s, and the 90s are really dark. It's a very, very dark period of time. And it's a cool period. I like the 90s. It's a dark period of time. And
well, grunge being the key music of that era, whether you're looking at Alice in Chains or Nirvana or whatever. And And who
Yeah,
does a
well,
lot
you
of
also
activities, but super dark.
you also have the death of Kurt Cobain, and I don't think people understand how much of a wave that caused. If you were 13 years old and you were listening to Nirvana, and Kurt Cobain all of a sudden dies, like your life, it's sort of like Kennedy dying in a lot of ways, and it sets off this kind of low key depression for men in the 90s, and grunge gets sort of morphs into emo, right? And it's like, what the fuck is emo? And it's like,
Ooh, hang on, because I was 16 when Kurt Cobain died.
I'm a few years older than y'all. I was in boot camp when he died, so like it didn't affect me that much. Like,
yeah, I was 17. I was
look,
17
Kurt
when
Cobain
Jerry
died.
Garcia died.
He's alive. We were talking about turning teenagers into ostriches, and now we're talking about turning them into emus.
But so hang on, just real quick, as far as the musical line of progression goes,
boot camp.
As far as the musical line of progression goes, emo was more of an offshoot of like mall punk than grudge. There's an argument to be made that for like a handful of years, grunge sort of replaced what was punk rock at the time, but there was a pushback on the punk side, and that morphed into like the pop punk, like Rancid and Blink 182 and stuff like that.
I think a Papa Roach is kind of grungy emo, right? Like there's this intersection where they kind of meet, and it's dark. And what are they singing about? Right? They're singing about, their soul, this darkness. I'm like, I'm lost. It's like, and
Last Resort is probably their biggest song. This is my last resort.
I'm from the music world, so I know a fair amount about, how this stuff unfolds.
I'm right there with you. Like I'm speaking from an observational standpoint.
Yeah, but it's like this, and grunge is heavy, right? It's dark, and that's one of the reasons why people kind of like it. It's like kind of got a little Black Sabbath in it. It's pretty dark. But then the death of Kurt Cobain sort of casts a pall over the 90s. And I think it does something to young men during that time. And it feels like when I listen to the music of the 90s, it feels like a lot of these young dudes are just lost. They're lost. And I'm not saying it's because Kurt Cobain died, but they don't have the same kind of societal compass that girls have, right? Girls are starting to be celebrated, girl power. So you got the Powerpuff Girls, right? Like this whole girl culture is starting to come online. You got the Spice Girls. Like it's a whole different trajectory for girls. Girls are going like this, and boys are going like this. And then you have Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and the whole Disney thing, right? And it's like there's this, like, I don't know, like a pole shift, and so men really haven't recovered from that time in a lot of ways. Like men have been sort of in the desert, for a very long period of time, and their attempt to come to grips with sort of this, and plus, by the way, how many boys were getting fed Ritalin, and just getting their brains scrambled, and who knows what else they're taking. Xanax.
My brother,
yeah.
I just recently kind of reunited with my brother. We haven't talked in fucking near 2 decades, and as a kid, they hammered that guy with fucking Ritalin and crap like that. And the conversations we have now, because he doesn't even take psych meds, no nothing. He won't take anything of theirs. And when he came, when he got older, he developed a street drug problem, which of course, like when I was very young, they were giving me white crosses. So when I was teenage and I started taking heavy doses of the uppers, oh, I'm so shocked. I don't, you guys only gave me this habit. And so he's been clean now for a number of years, same as myself. And it's super interesting. He watches the show and everything. He's also then taken and switched to the more metaphysical, spiritual path and trying to study that out. And it's interesting, once you took away that poison out of his mind for enough years, all of a sudden he wasn't the weirdo that I remember at all. Like,
yeah, it's amazing. And it's not easy to get off that stuff either. It's very, very difficult. So you have this exaltation of girls. And this has been going on for 25 years at least. And in the meantime, boys are getting hammered. And then the musical score for young men is like dark and emotional. And so I think a lot of these, then you get into like the mid 2000s and you have the incel movement people. Like this is the reactionary sort of, now we got this men's movement and you're going to go incel or you're going to go like,
that MGTOW.
You MGTOW, or you're going to go figure out like who is it? It's not Neil Gaiman. It's the other guy, Neil. What's his name? How to pick up Neil Strauss, right?
The Game, Mystery Method, Rockstar guy.
Right, exactly. So you're going to go in one of those two directions, and neither of which are getting to what you were talking about, Ben, which is this idea of having a partner, a wife, bond, a family, and having a whole different set of consciousness that goes along with that. And if you look at girls, they've had no shortage of so-called fucking, models like Gwyneth Paltrow, right? Goes off and starts, Goop or whatever it's called, or Oprah Winfrey at a much higher level, right? There are all these women in the culture that support the growth of women, the growth of girls, and empower. And where are they? Where is it for the dudes? There's nobody. Because
why is it that the growth and empowerment of women always also includes the degeneracy of women? Like when you speak about masculine empowerment, that means that you need to become a greater man. You need to become something more. So, somebody that people will look up to. That includes being a very responsible person and being a caretaker. That doesn't include being a whore. And in fact, and this is something I would take to the red pill community, including some of the orthos really aren't so much on this, but the red pill community, where they go around about basically the whole a key that can be opened by, or a lock that can be opened by any key is worthless, but a key that can open any lock is the master key. No, you know what? Historically, men that are sluts like that, they don't get respect either. And I can take that to ancient history. People like Jarl Hakan, who was philandering with different daughters and pretending like he liked them and kind of messing around and didn't actually commit. The people actually overthrew him just based on that. And in recent history, Bill Clinton, for all that they could talk about whatever else, the public opinion was based entirely around him having affairs. That's where he got condemned in public opinion. Nobody cares about any of the other shit that he did. They probably don't even remember it. They remember this cum spot on some little girl's outfit when the dude was married.
Right. Yeah. So I can see where the ortho bros would be drawn to a movement like that. That's a long sort of way around saying that men have been in the desert for quite a while. And so now you have a movement like that. And there's some of that starting to trickle down into Christianity. I have a client who has a daughter. She's a Gen Z, right? and she wound up marrying an older guy, so probably, I don't know, millennial, and he's a Christian, and she's basically just surrendered her will to this guy to the point where she can't even take her daughter, my client's granddaughter, can't even take her to the grandmother's house because she makes tinctures from herbs, and the husband thinks she's a witch, right? And so that's another iteration sort of kind of what we're talking about.
You know, the whole thing where any seed-bearing plants, yours to use, fucking idiots. Pharmakia, you know, that's actual, like, chemically made. You've taken the earth out of it.
Yeah, that's black magic. That's real black magic.
Organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry. Inorganic is more what they're supposed to be being warned at. Organic chemistry, where it's literally just plant matter, you know, different earth matter interchanging. Shut up.
I don't think nuance is allowed in the conversation.
I was recently in Kansas City, Missouri, a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't spent any, like, I don't really consider Texas the heartland. Texas is its own thing, right? If you get into Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, those places are very, very different. And I was in Kansas City, Missouri. I went to a Royals game, and so I was around, like, people that were matriculating into the stadium. Like, I was taking in sort of the people and the family vibe, and there was something about the vibe that was incredibly wholesome, and there were families with kids. I could see couples, young couples. You don't see a lot of young couples, by the way, now, right? You don't really see a lot of 20-somethings like hanging out, PDAs. They don't really do. I got a kid that's a Zoomer, Gen Z. A lot of them are not in relationships, and a lot of them don't even screw around because it's a landmine. Like, if you fuck the wrong girl and you fall for her, and I had a firsthand view of this. The breakup is brutal. It's nothing like any of us have ever experienced. It's all in chat groups. It's all on their social. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible, right? So a lot of these Gen Z guys, they're just like fucking hands off because they know that some women in their culture or in their group have been empowered to basically take body counts. And, you know, these chicks talk about body counts. But when I was in Kansas City, when I was in Missouri, I'm like, man, there's something going on here. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm 64 years old, but I saw something in a way that
fucking stud
got my DNA like kicked, right? And it was this guy, might have been about maybe 25, 26, and he was with a woman right around the same age, and she was really attractive, but she wasn't like, you know, filter, like IG filter attractive. She's just really, really attractive and wholesome. And I'm like, this is what this is about. Like, if I was that guy, right, all I'd want to do is make babies with her. That's all that woman, like, baby mama, let's do this. She had the vibe, and he kind of had his own vibe. And I think that's what we've lost. I don't know how we get it back, but it's this alchemical thing where when you look at this other person, right, the only thing you want to do is not want to get in their pants and whatever. It's like there's something deeply biological about it. And in that moment, I just really understood it. And it was not disassociated from beauty or attractiveness either. Like, that was also a part of it. And that doesn't mean that you have to have it in order to procreate, but it was like the whole package. I got it, right? And to me, it was just very natural. It had nothing to do with a religion or a people, but it was something deeply biological that just felt right. There was a purity to it. I was like, I get it. I totally get it. And I'm just wondering if we were able to separate ourselves from all these cultural trappings, right, and all the social media shit and all the things that go along with it, would we be able to kind of reset it in a way where that kind of like gnosis with another being could just naturally occur? Because it seems like we've been dealing with all these social disruptors that have gotten in the way of that process. Anyway, it was just a kind of a notice on my thought.
No, most excellent notice, and I agree. And I do think that if tomorrow the internet somehow went down, I doubt it. I know it doesn't work like that, but like the internet just all of a sudden wasn't a thing, 100% people would figure it out again. You know, they would get bored. The fact is electronically, whether it's video games or social media, they have figured out how to fulfill the innate urges that we have no matter what, which is we're a social being. Even myself, who's a pretty introverted and likes to live as isolationist as possible. Well, look, here I am on the internet, at least, you know, with my friends, at least 3-4 hours a week. And we chat back and forth a little more than that. So it's nobody wants to be completely isolated from the world. It's just not natural. And so if they took that away and they didn't have that as an option, eventually, like any starving dog, they would go looking for food. And it's going to be a little ugly and a little weird at first. And when, you know, it's probably very similar to like people like myself when I interact with younger, you know, or yourself, I'm sure, when you interact with younger people and whatever the catchphrase is today, like they think they're being smart at you, like, bye, Felicia. And you're just like, you fucking idiot. Do you think that you made a point? Right, you know, and it just comes eventually. All those stupid things will wear out because all of that was driven through this media, and so it'll start becoming more genuine interactions. Like I said, simply because just like a starving dog, they're going to go out and desperately need that interaction, and they're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, you know, I agree, and I was thinking that we have all these sort of disruptors, like with social media, things like Ritalin, psych meds, but we also have like these endocrine disruptors, and you know, the phthalates and all that other shit, man, and it's really upset the balance of nature, the balance of like the human experience with bonding and mating. And like, you know, if we're going to get back to, and I'm not sure if we can even get back now, especially with like AI, and we're going to start seeing a lot of the cyborg stuff. Like, did you guys catch that video of this woman, the cyborg robot, kissing the guy? Have you seen that video?
Yeah, I had brought up the idea of the robot consent brothel. The idea that men would have to use a chat app to get to know a robot, a silicone body, before that man could then take that.
I mean, doesn't that just defeat the entire purpose of it being a fake toy?
Well, again, they're trying to do this ethical thing where, you know, you can't have a sex doll without the consent. So we're in this conversation of like this spectrum between virility.
At that point, do I have to ask my toaster if it feels like toasting my toast?
Yes, because it's a smart toaster and it has intelligence. And this idea, it's like we're talking about.
Is this like that fucking Hot Tub Time Machine where he talks wrong to the car and then the car's pissed off at him and won't give him rides the whole rest of the show because he didn't tell it that it was important and valid and shit?
That is part of it. And no man is an island, but some men buy their own islands and own their own islands, so they are their own island, and then somehow we get to egg-shaped penises. But I want to talk about Pavel Durov, the Telegram guy, who announced that he has been a sperm donor successfully to over 100 women in different countries each. So he's spread his seed far and wide.
100 women into each of these countries, or just 100 overall women?
Again, to clarify, I believe his goal was to have a child in each country with a woman. So he was literally.
I only got 7, but I had to do direct injection. I didn't, get this cloud seeding method.
Right. So we're getting close to getting full circle here. Elon Musk wants everybody to know how virile he is with his IVF and all of his baby mamas. There's a need to return balance to nature.
Same thing too going on.
Who does?
Was it Jobs?
Steve Jobs. Could have been Bezos.
There's the Telegram founders.
Pavel Durov.
Yeah, the Durov brothers. Between Pavel Durov's got like 106 through, like 6 naturally and 100 through IVF, artificial insemination.
Allegedly, and I would say, like, if I'm a marketing person and talking optics, and we want our tech bro from Russia, who is in Russian exile, he's not allowed in, but he's in France, so he's a wealthy type of guy. He's basically, I was making the comparison to say, Russia, France, they have Pavel Durov. In America, we have Elon Musk, but they're both interested in letting the world know how sterile they are and how good their swimmers are at swimming into eggs, this type of thing. Kind of a strange thing to think about. This birth dearth, I think, is going to balance. Yeah, I think the birth dearth is going to balance out. You talked about seeing a natural relationship happening out in the street. These people were probably holding hands and kissing and making babies.
Yeah, they were definitely in tactile relationship.
Right, and these young men, you mentioned the word involuntary celibate. There's like this no fat movement, and some chads get all the ladies. It's gonna balance out.
I think so.
It'll balance out. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. I agree with you, but it seems like we swung the other way in a real imbalance.
Yeah.
And I do think we're kind of moving back in the other direction.
And with the balance,
my fear with it is the direction you see so many of them. It's basically like 80s jocks, like. Even with the Trump movement, rather than being more thoughtful about what's going on, it was, it makes the liberals cry. Whatever creates liberal tears, we support, and shit like that. It's and what you're seeing out of this manly man movement is 80s jock shit. And the fact is those weren't manly men. Those guys were cunts. And I've talked about this before from my perspective. The manly man, the epitome of that is husbandry, because that is the dude everybody looks up to. That is the guy that, whatever it is, whether it's you taking care of your dog, whether it's you've moved up and you have land and you're taking care of your land. This is somebody that's taking care of other things, doing right by them, having compassion, making things grow. And if he's successful, he becomes more successful. You start giving him more husbandry experiences. He gains a wife. He has children. Oh, look, his family loves him. Like, I don't care whether it's today, even politically, trying to, as a man, go up and be unmarried and go up and try and get a high political position ain't happening. You need to have proved that some woman will put up with your shit, that you can at least treat one woman good enough to make her happy in order for the others to trust you. Like, because that husbandry thing is the epitome of masculinity. And this needs to be the where the conversation is. It's very similar to me. Like, one of the things that has always been very odd to me is when I meet like the butch lesbians that are the ones that are trying to be masculine. All the things that they talk about and do aren't masculine. Like Christy and I, there was a heathen kindred that wanted me to join, and Christy and I went and checked it out, and they had a butch lesbian there, and all she sat and talked about was how she'd shove her fist up other girls, you know, and just weird shit like that. And it's like, and nothing she talked about was like responsibility or going out and doing work. Like when if my friends and I are sitting around, hell, the other day that cops were here, and I almost got into a big old fat conversation with the cop about fucking motors and drivetrains and shit, because we're dudes. And it was hard. The guy he brought with him couldn't get in because he had like a piece of shit Explorer, and this guy had, you know, the F-250 with posi rear end and all that shit, you know, and he's telling me about, you know, we're dudes. And like, I just put posi in my rear end because I blew out my rear pumpkin, and when I did, the bolts came out of my carrier. Normally you just replace the bearings, but because the bolts came out of my carrier, they roll around in there, fucked up the spiders, all that. So as long as I'm getting a new carrier, you damn straight I'm putting posi in this, or at least posi lock ability. See, that's guy stuff. I don't care about what weird sex you had last night. I don't want to hear about it. Like, and this is what I see out of these other dudes too. Like, it's very jockish. It's still very they want to push girls around a lot. Like, that is one thing I can put on the Ortho Bro crowd. They're fascinated with finding retarded, very weak leftist men and young girls to just absolutely have at it with and make look like fools. And yeah, I don't disagree. The things that they're saying and thinking and doing are stupid.
Those are easy victories.
Yeah, but how tough do you feel having done it? Like, at the end of the day, you know, yeah, I could take candy from babies all day, but I'm not going to brag about it. But you go beat somebody, you know, that's worth fighting. Well, now that's something else.
Like deliberation. We had begun this show. Now we're on the 41 version, like the 41st stream on a Tuesday. I think we started on Thursdays and we moved to Tuesdays. You know, okay, 41. I have some personal syncs just to spout off real quick. Twitter announced today to me that I had been on Twitter for 14 years. And then I posted our link here. And I think that was, I don't know how many I had. There's another 4 there on my personal tweets. And then I was going to ask really about like synchronicity and synchromysticism and QAnon stuff. I don't know. There was a place where it was showing me how many tweets I had, and the number was like 444 tweets. Yeah, 4,444 posts, which would be me linking to the Rumble chat here for the 41st episode. So a lot of 4s, connecting that back to the 4th card of the major arcana being the Emperor card. So 4 foundation, looking for foundation, that sort of square, drawing the lines, having 90-degree angles, putting a fence around your house, this type of thing, looking for boundaries. And this idea of like shock value. There was a whole genre of comedy and shock jocks. And like, I want to say the most extreme thing to push the boundaries of free speech. And now that everything that could be said in shocking has kind of already been said. So now we're trying to find like, where do we go back and find a not really clean comedy, but sort of, how do we have an edge without being edgy? How do we be a musician without being emo and wearing black makeup and face paint and this type of thing? Because that was seen as cringe. And young people, I don't know if your son is like really avoidant of cringe behavior and standing out and wants to wear beige clothes and not stand out and not be seen as being cringe, because everything on the internet lasts forever. Again, getting Twitter notifications.
My son has been wearing the same thing since he was 9, 10 years old. shorts and a freaking t-shirt. That's been his dress code.
Does he have a secret identity as a sartorialist fashion outfit of the day poster on a social media that's just completely private?
Yeah, he even if it's like, I don't know, 40 degrees out, the dude's wearing shorts, right? That's just his style.
Cargo shorts, khaki jeans.
I would say he's probably not cargo, probably like khaki world.
Is he dressing for comfort? Is that kind of like
he
priority?
is definitely dressing for comfort. But yeah, to your point, he is cringe avoidant for sure. Definitely cringe avoidant. So sometimes, like when we were together, we were walking up to the stadium, and I saw this couple, right? And what I'm talking about, and I said, no, those hips are childbearing hips. And he was like, I'm like, oh, serious, man. That's what I'm talking about. If you want a mother for some children, that's your target zone right there, right? And he had a bit of a challenge digesting that.
Was that because it sounds like it's objectifying a woman, talking about her measurements?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's part of it, right? I think that was part of it. I think another part was, like I was a dirty old man or something, But he's probably right. But if I was with my father and I was his age, and he said that to me, I probably wouldn't have had a problem with it. I probably would have, yeah, might be right there. File that away. But he's a Pisces, so he has kind of a sensitive, proprietary sort of model. But Alan, you said something before the fashion thing. What was it? You brought something up. What was it?
The sperm donations, the sperm racers, the patriarchy, the arcana, the four, the Capricorn.
Yeah, I don't know.
The synchronicities about my Twitter or my X account telling me I've been posting for 14 years and this was my 4,444th post tonight on delivering dog-based dudes A, B, C, D, which is 444. D is 4, and now we're on 4 and 1. So it's a lot of fours and boxes and squares and this type of thing.
Right. Yeah. So the immensity of that sort of flew past me, and I just wanted to get back there. That's some deep sinks, man. That is some very, very deep sinks. And we started the show off tonight with the moon in the balsamic position of Gemini. And we're just getting ready to go into the new phase with Cancer, this Cancer moon. And things are going to get real American around these parts real soon. Cancer is very, very steeped in Americana and steeped in like the tradition of the folk and the land.
We're looking forward to 4th of July.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the people. And we have Jupiter in Cancer for the next year. It goes retrograde in November. It's going to be interesting maybe seeing the buildup of this so-called American spirit, or this kind of return to these organic roots. And we're talking about marriage. Yeah, we're talking about marriage. We're talking about husbandry. Ben, you're talking about like your land and a home. These are all Cancerian topics, right? This is all Jupiter in Cancer. And this is a great conversation to have in the onset of it, because I feel like we're gonna start to see more of this come back to us in the culture. And it feels like a lot of the woke energy and a lot of the social Marxism and the fake liberal stuff is going to start to do a deep fade. You know, we're theoretically there's still 6 days left of Pride Month. Did you know that? Right? Like Pride Month was nothing.
It's wildly, you know. I mean, granted, the war and the riots overshadowed it, but yeah, you've heard almost nothing about it.
Put my hand on my heart, sing, and I'm proud to be an American. We passed June 19th as well, the Juneteenth day.
Juneteenth day. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that kind of went right by the wayside this month too. Didn't really hear shit about that one either.
Unless you're Jacob Frey.
Jacob Frey, yeah, mayoral guy.
Did you see his dance?
I try not to.
He had a very special Juneteenth dance.
Choreography.
With a group of young black women who were doing a very street.
I'm gonna be sassy here and say the only choreography I care about is Corey Feldman's choreography. Dance moves here. And we can move into the fourth turning.
Fourth turning. There we go.
Fourth turning.
He was very into the Angels and Devils album. It was life changing for Marcus. Kind of like when I was getting divorced and you know, like a Pretty Hate Machine came out and you just, you know, had to listen to it on repeat. That's Marcus and Corey Feldman.
Dude, you wound me up a little bit. Let me just spit out a few things. Last week I talked about my Newsboys dog tag.
Nice.
Do you know who the Newsboys are?
Weren't they like a vocal group or something like that?
They're like the number one largest Christian music act through the 1990s. I saw them play at the Target Center. They went on a big tour, Step Up to the Microphone tour. Really, really big tour. Adjacent to them was a band called Audio Adrenaline. There was another band called DC Talk. You might be familiar with DC Talk.
Yeah,
they took a picture with
kind of a hit. DC Talk had kind of a hit.
A Jesus Freak song, kind of a grungy Kurt Cobain sound to it. Right. So I bring this up because I got this dog tag to wear because I went to the concert. I was a big fan of the band, but then I'd wear this to middle school. I was like 7th grade, and you know, men wearing jewelry. I used to wear What Would Jesus Do bracelets in 4th grade, and you know, a big believer in believing. You know, the gospel message, this type of thing, going to church. So I'd wear a Newsboys dog tag, but then if I wore it out, people were like, what does that say? Now I'm standing out. So am I supposed to profess my faith and tell my friends that I listen to the band called The Newsboys? No, it's just Newsboys, and they have a song about eating breakfast, and it's really clever, and breakfast in hell, and all this Newsboys merchandise. So then I stopped talking about it because it would.
I bet they have bacon in hell.
Not kosher, man, not kosher. So like the history of the Newsboys being out of Australia, they come to America. DC Talk was Liberty University students. They were talking about the racial issues too, like the colored people song that they had, and now recently. The dark-skinned gentleman in the DC Talk band, he was getting older and he wasn't married. He didn't have a wife. All the other members had a wife, but he was in Nashville, and there was this sort of rumor that everybody in town knew that he was interested in not women. Now, being a Christian singer, this is not great optics, not going to sell new records. He doubled down, the management of the Newsboys doubled down, and they did the God's Not Dead movie music video, branded God's Not Dead. It was the Kevin Sorbo movie where they debated an atheist and they brought back Jesus into the picture of the movies in the theaters. People loved that. The black guy, I'm just going to use his name, Michael Tate. That's his name. He was in DC Talk. He became the lead singer in the Newsboys. So then they continued their ministry of the band that they were in. And then now their label, as of, you know, a couple of days ago, the label dropped the band. They were into a lot of Trump stuff, Trump politics, right-wing politics, Christian nationalism, and this sort of thing. Now it turns out the lead singer of the band being a black man who was into
penis,
17-year-old, 18-year-old young.
Penis?
Well, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So now we're at this point coming to terms with the Christian performers are operating as a business, and there really is there's no I don't know, like a social condom that protects them from sexual transmitted demons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then
do
there's
you
this.
do you think it's something in like the choral structure of the music itself?
I think we're at the point where the former is being torn down and something new is emerging.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Newsboys are the #1 touring Christian rock group, but they're aging out, so now they're bringing in the younger groups. So this is part of the cycle turning.
Did you ever listen to a group called Mute Math?
Yes. They came out of a band called Earth Suit, and they had an album called Kaleidoscope Superior. Mute Math, kind of a math rock group.
They were also Christians.
Yes.
I was a huge Mute Math fan. I loved them.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw them in Austin at it's a music festival.
Big festival.
Yeah.
Not South by Southwest.
It's South by Southwest. And so here's how I discovered Mute Math. I was there. I was in the business, and I was up late, and I got back to my hotel room, and I was watching local cable access. And Mute Math had made like about a 5-song video DVD of live stuff, and they were just looping it over and over and over again on this local access. And I'm like, who are these guys? They're kind of freaking amazing. And then I looked in the South by Southwest guide. I'm like, oh, they're going to be at this place tomorrow night. And I saw them, and I saw U2 on their very first tour of the United States. And Mute Math had all the energy of U2, but more different, electric.
Talking vibes. What's the vibe like?
Oh my God. It was, how would I describe it? Like kind of part Bjork, part like hardcore, not hardcore punk, but new wave, like hard new wave, like kind of speed, math rocky, lots of melody, lots of jumping around. The lead singer, this guy Paul, I forget his last name, played a guitar, played the shit out of this guitar. The drummer had headphones around his head. He took duct tape and he wrapped the duct tape around his headphones. I mean, this band was electric. I saw Mute Math at least 4 times, and they used to play their music to my kid. And I took him to Emos. Speaking of emo, I took him to Emos in Austin to see Mute Math. They're not around anymore, but they were amazing, and they were a Christian group that I could actually listen to and get behind. They were kind of like, the word I would use for Mute Math is electric. They had a really electric vibe to them.
And has Amy Grant given them an award?
I don't think so. I don't know if they were.
Did you see a documentary called like Jesus Music?
No, I didn't.
There's like this really insular history of like the Jesus People movement out of California.
Yeah.
The Jesus Freak idea, and Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith. There's like royalty, like the Christian music royalty. Mute Math is not really get recognized there.
What about Puddle of Mud? Where's Puddle of Mud in there?
I only listen to Payable on Death, POD.
Yeah,
Christian music.
Isn't Puddle of Mud that one that a lot of their songs were more sexual based? Like,
is that what they were singing about? Well, they're saying it was kind of sexual.
I think so. Didn't they have that one about spanking, about spanking each other or something like that?
Right. This vibe check of sort of wholesome but energetic is kind of where young people are heading towards.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where the religiosity is becoming kind of a spirituality, and it's sort of transforming Christianity at the moment. And there's this dialectic between Christian nationalism in like Idaho, like Greg Wilson, and like Christian nationalism, theocracy, versus like a Russian Orthodoxy. And when I want to speak to Orthodox Christian men to have a conversation, it's because I come from a different strand of Christianity. And to me, like a Russian Orthodoxy is kind of strange because I'm Minnesotan and we are like Swedish and German and Lutefisk and Lutheran.
Yeah, they eat stinky fish.
Stinky fish. Land of 10,000 lakes. We like walleye, stinky fish, this type of thing.
You don't want to go to their potlucks. It's bad.
No, it's great. It's very good. It's good fellowship, picnics, that type of thing.
Smells like a 1500s whorehouse. It's horrible.
POD. That was the group I was thinking of.
Southtown.
Yeah,
POD.
Oh yeah, the I'm Still Alive.
I'm So Alive for the very first time. Yeah, the Satellite album, that was huge. That was played on MTV. They had a song on the Matrix soundtrack, one of the movies, Sleeping Awake. They sang about Zion. Yeah, there was a lot of symbolism on their album covers, kind of some spooky Illuminati butterfly stuff, and people really get into that. Maybe we'll have to have a part 2 conversation.
You got
100%.
Switchfoot. Here's another one.
New Way to Be Human. They have a song, Chem 6A. Been a big fan of them for a long time.
Striper.
I'm sorry, did you say Striker?
Striper. Stryper.
With a P, okay.
Yeah.
You get very specific about it. That's like Marcus's litmus test of whether you were actually a Christian listener.
These are all guys from like San Diego, Southern California.
The Southtown movement, the OC Supertones, Orange County Supertones, ska band. Yeah. MXPX was down there, Living Sacrifice, and then they all kind of moved north to sign to Tooth and Nail Records in, I think, Seattle area. I mean, I could talk Christian music for the rest of my life.
Petra from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
You know, Petra means rock. They are a rock.
They are a rock. Interesting genre. Wasn't Sixpence done the richer Christian band?
Kiss Me Beneath the what's Moonlight, the balsamic vinegar new moon phase.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down in my notes, if I get that right.
Yeah. What a interesting little subculture here. Very, very interesting. Looking at all these different Decipher Down. Jars of Clay. That's another band.
Flood.
That I've heard of. Jars of Clay.
Yeah. Third Days getting back together for a reunion tour.
But I don't see Mute Math in here. I'm looking at all these listings. I mean, were they not considered a Christian group?
Well, okay. So Christian radio stations, there's really just one, and it's
what are you talking about? Like half the stations out there.
But they're all owned by one corporation now. So
yeah.
Corporate media. It's not there's one company. It's not iHeartRadio. It's K-Love.
Yeah.
Is it K-Love that bought up all the Christian music stations? So the K-Love bought up all the small stations. You get in your car, you turn on the radio, and it's just K-Love, and everyone owns K-Love owns everything. So it's gotten so centralized at the top. The fourth turning is moving towards a decentralized thing where people are making their own playlists and sharing. So there's a huge opportunity to be an influencer. You know, I think my money is going to be made being a Christian music influencer on TikTok, where I just talk about Christian music from the 90s, and that's probably going to shoot me up to number one.
Now that's a niche channel right there that would get you a lot of traction.
Yeah.
Number one.
So Mute Math, I just looked up. They are not typically considered a Christian band, though their music explores themes that can be interpreted through a Christian lens. While some members, like Paul Meany, previously belonged to the Christian band Earthseed. UMass,
Suit, yeah.
has distanced itself from being labeled a strictly Christian act. I was so blown away by these guys live that I knew these dudes that produced this big music festival in Santa Rosa. Lots of national acts like Lauryn Hill and just a bunch of people. Usually like jam band rock. John Anderson played, but just a bunch of every year. So I'm coming back from Texas, and I've got the Gospel of Mute Math, and I'm like, you guys got to get these guys to play here. They're fucking amazing. And the guys who ran the festival, they were good dudes. I mean, they're always cool to me and everything. Backstage passes. They were Jewish, right? And it's like there was this idea, I think, that UMath was a Christian rock band at that time, and they were okay with reggae, right? They were okay with all that Solomonic stuff,
Like the Jaman.
Yeah, they were cool with that.
Praise Jah.
But when it came to UMath, it was like, yeah, I don't know if we want to promote these guys. I'm like, geez, I mean, that's not exactly what they said.
Right. And that's probably why the band wanted to be musicians first and not considered a Christian band. They might be like privately amongst themselves Christians, like Christians who are in a band together, but the band itself is not a Christian band because that might imply that they are a worship band, meaning they play music for church, like gospel choir.
Right. Well, when I went to their shows, clearly there were believers there, and they were, very much into the music and dancing. You could just tell that they weren't drawing from your typical sort of rock audience.
Mm.
So they were in this really weird place, sort of stuck between worlds in some ways.
My final question that I wanted to ask was about yacht rock moving into like good vibrations. Brian Wilson, what happened there?
Well, what's interesting is Brian Wilson and Sly Stone died within 3 or 4 days of each other, and both of them have a very interesting footprint, right? Of course, Brian Wilson is associated with Southern California beach culture, the Beach Boys, American sort of eccentricism, right? And his passing happens right before the LA riots. And there's something very poignant in some ways about it. It's sort of like the death of America. Like Wilson symbolizes that up until a certain point where, he really goes off the deep end. But he and his brothers.
Woodrow,
yeah.
Woodrow Wilson? Wilson?
Yeah, Woodrow's he's in a different band.
Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson. I think Dennis would. Dennis Woodrow.
Dennis Woodrow Wilson.
Yes, I think he would. He would have.
He would have if he could have.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's something symbolic about the passing of Brian Wilson, right? Like he really is very American, whether it's, the Beach Boys, harmony phase and songs about surfing or cars or girls, or even when he gets into the sandbox and goes into this kind of, avant-garde kind of eccentric American experimentalism. Like even that, like America has Uranus and Gemini. So we're a quirky country, right? Moon and Aquarius. We like eccentrics in a lot of ways. We like kooky people. We tolerate that. And Dennis Wilson definitely had that trajectory. And he's also part of a comeback story. And we love comeback stories, right? And he managed to mostly get his shit together and sort of, reassemble Smile and put it out as Smiley Smile and tour. And he dies just as the LA riots are taking off. And it's poignant and sad in a lot of ways. But then you have Sly Stone, who spent most of his adult life in Los Angeles. I mean, he was living in Northern California. The family Stone were from Oakland. And I think after the second or third album, he moves to LA and sets up operations in LA. And, he becomes infected. LA infects Sly Stone. And one of his more interesting records is called There's a Riot Going On. And he dies just before the LA riots start. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Sly Stone. And he kind of passed away without a lot of fanfare in a lot of ways. Like, there was a lot more attention paid to Brian Wilson's passing. But Sly Stone was an interesting cat. And he had this funky biracial group that was breaking down all kinds of lines. It blended funk and rock and black and white and men and women, or women. Sly and the Family Stone, I think his sister and this other gal went there. Cynthia played that horn, right? So, but then he goes to LA and he goes dark. And literally he goes very, very dark. In that last record, it's not his last record, but it's his last great record. There's a Riot Going On. It's kind of like this dark, electronic, strangely like prescient electronic kind of funk. And when you look at the cover of the record, it's an American flag, but the stars are like asterisks, right? They're not real stars. And I just found it like incredibly timely that this guy is passing just as the LA riots are happening. And we're going to see a lot of these musicians go away. I mean, it's like only a matter of time before, the next guy in Led Zeppelin, probably Robert Plant, I would say, Ozzy Osbourne. I had heard that Ozzy Osbourne was actually dead, like around the same time as Sly Stone. I think Ozzy's on his way out. And it's a very interesting kind of moment, like to see these people were like gods, I mean,
I want to check in on ABBA. I know that they were doing holographic ABBA concerts, and was it Tupac Shakur reappeared as a
they had Tupac as a hologram. They had Michael's too. Yeah. But these people were like gods, and now the gods are dying. And we're witnessing this, the mortality of, these musicians who were very godlike in a lot of ways. It's a very humbling thing to witness. And, music lives on, and they got interviews on YouTube. But
the same thing's happening in Hollywood, I think. You don't see the rise of these super A-list, triple A stars that the whole world knows. Musicians, it seems to have the mega stars, like, you remember the 80s, like concerts were fucking more expensive in the 80s than they are now, and they were a production. Now you're getting very much more localized things, smaller channels. They're doing well and succeeding, and it's all very local things.
Yeah, like, nobody's ever going to accuse Timothée Chalamet of being Paul Newman or Steve McQueen, right? Like, these people were.
God, I can't believe they made him fucking Muad'Dib. Get the fuck out of here.
That's a demographic call, right? That's a total demographic
Gentlemen,
call.
and if we open up a can of Dune worms, we'll be here another 4 hours.
Yeah. Robert said he was. This was about his checkout time.
I know Steve is standing by.
That you want aired out that you're getting ready to do, Robert. Anywhere you want people to go.
Yeah. Before I do that, I just wanted to circle back on something that Alan brought up.
I'm in trouble. What I say?
No. It's good. You were talking about Christian nationalism.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah,
that's a
trouble.
trend. That's a trend that's going to keep growing. And that's your Saturn, Neptune, and Aries conjunction. And the Christian nationalism is only getting started. So I just wanted to put that on the table. So you can find me over at robertphoenix.com. That's my website. I do most of my content creation, however, here on Rumble, primarily on YouTube. I have the 11th house. I do the Astro Weather 3 times a day, or 3 times a week, rather, and talk about what's going on astrologically. And I have a Friday show where I interview people, and I have a Sunday night show where it's all hardcore 3 hours of astrology. Today, the star of the day, I do think of the star of the day, and I looked at somebody born on a specific day, and I take apart their chart and I take apart their story. And today's star of the day was Charles Whitman, who was the Texas Tower shooter. And I learned a lot. First of all, there's, of course, some meaningful connections inside the chart. But I learned something about him today, over the last 24 hours, that really blew my mind. And one of the things that caused him to, kill his wife, his mother, and 15 other people, is that he was having these voices. He was hearing voices in his head, right? And he was having all these, strange thoughts to do these things that normally he did not want to do. And he sought all this professional help, and nobody could really give it to him.
Was it nanotechnology inside?
He had a tumor in his brain. It was pressing up on his amygdala, and it was affecting his ability to think and not switch off sort of the darkness. And he consciously wrote, wasn't a manifesto. He said, if you were reading this note, reading this missive or whatever, please have an autopsy on my brain, because something is not right. And I hope that it can be a help for others in the future. Now, this is a guy writing this note, and he's about to go up on a tower and clip 15 people. Okay? It's kind of mind-blowing. And it just, kind of crushed me, because you looked at him, and he's a Cancer, Taurus rising, all-American guy, big, strong, IQ 136, was a hunter when he was a kid. Father said he could shoot the eye out of a squirrel at 100 feet, right? Went into the Marines. He was a marksman. They put him in like an engineering program at UT. I mean, he had all the trappings of a really good American dude. And he had a little bit of a wild side. He was a bit of a gambler. He did some typical shit that, dudes do. But he had a paper route, made enough money in his paper route as a kid to buy a motorcycle. Right? Did his motor, and then he fixes. I mean, this was an interesting character. And he winds up succumbing to this tumor, and he had these incredible headaches and these thoughts, and it's an absolutely heart-crushing story about the failure of a system that couldn't attend to his condition, because he didn't even know what it was, and they didn't have the technology. They didn't have CAT scans. They didn't have MRIs, right? And it's actually heartbreaking. And he kills his mother and he kills his wife because he doesn't want them to live with the shame that he's going to cause them. Like, this is how much forethought and rationality, weird rationality he had. Anyway,
I got some weird rationality here. Scan this cat. Turn the shirt around. What does it say? Shooter Jennings. Did you know that?
Shooter Jennings.
I didn't tell you that, did I?
No.
And that's how you ended it.
There you go.
I guess that's magic. If anyone is wondering.
With an ICK.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, it's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. We greatly appreciate it. It's always a pleasure talking to you, brother. It really is.
Thank you for
we will have to do
Steve.
so again soon.
Steve let us run overtime.
And well, we're probably just gonna shit talk some afterwards. So
We have an outro video. I'm excited to see the outro video.
Well, yes, we will play the outro, but Steve kicked up a hornet's nest, and we need to wager some shit without dragging Robert into it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, brother.
You guys take care. All right.
You also.
No, you haven't. You're a lying dog faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. Dog face. Dog face.
Dude?
Dog face.
Dude?